like to have a roll call for attendance. Roll.
Bart Conant, absent. Daniel Vergari,
Here.
Darrell Lewandowski.
Here.
Pam Merlo, here. TJ McLaughlin, here. Casey Kelly, here. Doug Shepherd.
Here. All right, we have a quorum. Next item up is approval of agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second, we have a motion from Mr. Vergara, is there a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None, so we've approved the agenda. 12 items, the last of which is adjournment, so. Item 4 is public comment, and I'll just mention that we have two public hearings scheduled this evening, related to a conditional use on Brookville Road and a conditional use on Salem Road. And if you have comments that you would like to make related to those, I would hope that you would do that during the public hearing and not do that during the public comment here at the beginning of the meeting. And then if you need to say something, anything else, as we get to the end of the meeting, we have another opportunity for public comment as well. Okay? So, is there any public comment at this time? There is not. We'll move on to item 5, which is correspondence, and I guess we have a bunch of it. It seems like we must have paid our dues to the Planning and Zoning Association because we got July, August, and September issues all at once. Okay, and it's just normal reference material. And then we've had other correspondence, I believe.
Yes, from Green Oak Charter Township has sent a letter saying that they have updated their master plan and they would like us to take a look at it. If we have any comments, they need to be returned by November 20th.
Okay. Very good. And that's it for correspondence?
That's it.
Okay. So we're not wasting any time. We're gonna get to the meat of the evening here. I think what I'll do is I'll explain the way the public hearings work overall, and then we'll get into the actual procedures we have to go through for public hearings. Just as a point of reference, everything we do is spelled out in either the zoning ordinance, about, I don't know, 250 pages here or something like that, and then the bylaws of the planning commission, and the procedure I have to go through to run this and the actions we take and things we consider are all basically codified. So what's gonna happen in the public hearings is we'll make a motion to open it, we'll run through the procedures, and then we hear from the applicant, then we hear from the consultants, and then we have public comment. And when we get to, and then we have a motion to close. And then after we go through the public hearings on both our subjects, then the planning commission is gonna consider as business items the actual applications related to the conditional uses. And then we may or may not take action on those, and then we'll move on to the rest of the meeting. So that's kind of the synopsis of where we're going tonight, okay? So, I'd like to make a motion that we open a public hearing. Well, first I want to ask a question. And the question I'll ask is related to the conditional use on Brookville, which is 14004. Has the proper notification been given to the residents in the newspaper and with regard to signage?
Yes.
Okay. Then I guess we have a proper application and other things. So I'd like to make the motion that we open a public hearing for the purpose of hearing about the conditional use application. It's item 14004. A conditional use at 9130 Brookville Road to operate a landscape maintenance property business. Is there a second?
I second it.
I think Daryl's got it.
Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second.
Yes.
Any other discussion? I guess we have a roll call vote at this time then.
Daniel Vergari,
Yes?
Darrell Lewandowski,
Yes.
Pam Merlo, yes. TJ McLaughlin. Yes. Casey Kelly.
Yes.
Doug Shepherd.
Yes. Okay, so we are opening the public hearing at 7:35. And at that point, I'd like to hear from the applicant. Yes? Just,
Okay, going up here.
yeah, I think if you use the microphone, it may help everybody understand what you're up to.
We're here to obtain a special use permit for 9130 Brookville, and some of you are aware of it, some been out to the property, I don't know if everybody has. We've been at this site for 25 years conducting our business, when the township this year approached us and said, you know, you need to follow some guidelines. So they gave me the guidelines, and they were 6 of them on our part, and I believe that was for section, well, there's 11 of them for 6306, which is the conditional use standards. And then there's section number 40.017 to comply with 6 points of interest. A lot of that referred to us. So those points of interest, roughly 16, 17 of them were handed my way, and I worked very close with the township. Some of you members have been out to the property and met with me. We've involved DDQ and the township. They came out and met with a couple of us from the township and me to go over the property to see to it that we're complying with the state and county laws, and they had no issues with it. Those records should be in your file as well. We put together a pamphlet. I'm guessing you received, everybody has a copy of that. That was done after October 30th, or October 3rd. The first one was September 25th, it got revised on October 3rd. Those are those 2 items for landscape business and conditional use restrictions. Did everybody get those from the township and go over and review those? The plan, we come up with a plan. We are in the AR district, we're allowed to be there and comply. We came up with a plan to build a pole barn and put the equipment at the back of the property that meets all the setbacks. So you should have a copy of a plan as to where the barn's gonna go, where the drive's gonna go, where employee parking is gonna be. It also specifies in there that we're not a storage facility for landscape materials or salt or bulk pesticides or anything like that. So it's pretty basic. We come in the morning, we pick up our equipment, and we leave. We don't allow customers to come to this facility. None of them know the address, nor do we desire to have them there. No retail sales are out there because we don't sell retail. We primarily work on commercial properties. We go to them. So for this use permit, we have followed every one of these guidelines. The township gave you their recommendations as to where we fall in this and if we do comply. And what I have read, it says, for the most part, if you comply, then we should allow you to do that. You're in the right zoning and you do fall within the guidelines of our master plan. And we spent time making sure all the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted. The business hours are on your plan there. You should see that. It's pretty descriptive, pretty understanding. I don't know if you have any questions in regards to it, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Green belt has to be made. There's no problem with getting that done and served up. We highlighted areas that are existing, and we had areas, there's a key on there, we have area that we have to add an existing green belt to the property to create separation. The west side of the property, south side of the property are fine. There's plenty of notes on there, I'm sure you're familiar with it all, everybody read those, see where we're at. So we got our screening. Basically all we do is store equipment, come and go. There's times where guys may work on the equipment, light stuff, changing mower blades, maybe a belt or filters. We don't do heavy duty engine changes and what have you like that. If we're there, it's minimal time. The most amount of time we spend is taking care of my mom's home. We take care of all our maintenance for mower grass, take care of her landscape, change light bulbs, whatever she needs done, we do at the house. We spend a fair bit of time doing that there already. But, and as far as polluting groundwater contamination, we address that. We don't store salt. We don't store pesticides. We buy and use. We have vendors for that. We're not in that sort of business. Simply picking equipment up in the morning and leaving and coming back with it in the evening. And that's what we're here for our conditional use permits. We can put our barn up and conduct our business here in this district that we should be allowed to. Unless somebody has questions, if he has any questions about what has been given, I think I've answered quite a bit through the packet.
We'll be able to ask questions when we get to the business item related to it,
Okay.
so
Okay.
I think we'll defer for now.
Okay, all right. That's all we're looking for is conditional use permit, based on the information I gave you and what the township has provided with you and their answers to us.
All right,
Okay?
thank you, Mr. Lodeman.
Yep, thank you.
All right, so we have the application and such, we've had the overview. The next step is to hear from the consultant. Mr. Nandy, we have a report from you, maybe you'd like to highlight some of the findings in that report, some of the the questions that or let's say the sections of the zoning ordinance that we studied, and the findings.
I can take care of that for you. Everybody should have a copy of our report dated October 3rd. And this report covers both the conditional use permit application and what's called a minor site plan. That's the drawing that the gentleman referred to. You actually have two action items before you tonight. They're tied together, but there'll be two separate approvals. Approving the conditional use permit or not, and approving or taking action on the minor site plan as well. In our report, just actually start at the second page for just a moment, just hit a couple of highlights. As we note in our report, that we are reviewing an updated site plan. You may notice the date on the report. There was an original report from September 25th that we submitted. The applicant responded to that with updated information, and so we then revised our report accordingly. So that's what you have tonight as our revised report. We did review this based on the standards of the ordinance that apply. It's section 40.107. It's a standard. It's a section for landscape businesses. And that landscape businesses are somewhat of a interesting land use in the zoning ordinance because they're allowed, in several different districts. They're allowed in the agricultural residential district, where this one is proposed to be. They're also allowed in the some of the more intensive districts, such as the industrial districts. The character of the land use changes depending on where the activity is. The section 40.107 restricts what can be done in the agricultural district. It's a much less intensive activity in the AR district than would be allowed in say, in the industrial district. So we did review based on this section. Page 2 lists our comments, and we found that from our perspective that the application for conditional use permit approval does satisfy the standards that are in 40.107. As was mentioned, there are no retail sales, there's no outside storage. All the activities are going to be moved inside of a new pole barn building, so that all the materials or vehicles are stored inside during non-working hours. The site plan also includes detailed notes related to land use, just as the applicant mentioned, that the activity really is very limited on site. And one thing I will mention is that every note that's on the site plan itself, if it is adopted by this board, becomes part of the zoning of the property. It is an enforceable document. And so every note that they place in it, every restriction that's proposed, shown on that plan or in any part of the application materials that the applicant has provided to you, would become part of the ordinance, essentially, that would apply to that piece of property. On page 3 of our report, we noted, I apologize, I better make one note on page 2. Right in the middle of page 2, we have a comment on road access. Section 40.107 includes a requirement that this type of business be located on a primary road as identified by the County Road Commission. But it also includes the ability for the planning commission to accept this activity on a local road as identified by the county, based on certain criteria. And as I mentioned in my report, essentially the criteria in 4107 are basically the same issues, same criteria as you're going to be reviewing when you look at the standards for conditional use permit approval, which we'll get to in a moment. So if you find that this project satisfies the standards for conditional use permit approval, then my recommendation would be to accept the activity on local road. The standards as are in parallel to one another. We have, from our finding, we have no objection to what's proposed for access to the local road as defined by the county, based on the scale of the activity and especially the scale of the future activity, the limitations that are on this in terms of future activity on the site. We see it as being compatible with the local road. Page 3 of our report deals a little bit more with the minor site plan itself. Also we did make notes about screening, and as was mentioned by the applicant, they have proposed to add some substantial screening on the east side of the property around the business location. The business location itself is being located away from the road and behind the existing home on that site, so it's placing it just about as far away as it can be from neighboring activity, certainly neighboring dwellings. And it is proposed to be substantially screened, and the screening is in accordance with the zoning ordinance requirements. And so that brings us then to the table that's on page 3 and 4 of our report. And this table lists the standards for conditional use permit approval. Our comments have been included in there. Just a few highlights, as was mentioned. We agree that the findings are that there are no violations of any state statutes or county requirements related to this activity. I think you may have some information in your packet about that. On page 4 of our report, one of the standards is that dust and noise and other impacts should not unreasonably impact the surrounding properties, and we would note that we noted that the activity on the site we would anticipate will certainly be no worse, and quite frankly, we think it'd be much less than what might be happening related to other permitted uses in that zoning district, including farming operations, which raise a substantial amount of dust and odor and noise and other impacts in certain times of the year. We see this as an activity that is of a scope that will fit on this site going forward, based on the limitations that have been included in the site plan. And so with that then brings us to the end of our report on page 5. We just note that the application is complete, it's ready for your review. And as noted there, I'd like to say, as part of your review, encourage you to identify specific findings of fact and conclusions that you feel are relevant to the case, and include those in any motion that you make on the application. We did include, if you are inclined to grant approval, we did include a couple of conditions that we would recommend be attached, just to make sure that the site remains in compliance with the zoning ordinance. And with that, we'd be happy to answer questions going forward.
Thank you.
We want to ask questions now or later? No?
Well, for clarification, if you think it'll help the audience, otherwise, our opportunity to dive into it pointedly will come up after the end of the public hearing.
Okay. I'll wait.
You wait?
Yeah, I just,
Okay,
I want
all
an
right.
explanation.
I have to make a note, I was making my notes because I wouldn't remember the questions that I have. Thank you. Okay, so, the next step here is the opportunity for public comments. And so the way we do this, if you'd like to speak, you can raise your hand, I'll find you. And then if you would please come forward and clearly state your name and place of residence so that we have that for the record, and then provide your comment, and that will be good. And I will just suggest that the comments that will be most valuable to those of us in the planning commission are the ones that relate to the elements of the zoning ordinance and the requirements that we have to consider. Which you can say anything that you care to. But that's that. So, at that point, we're ready for public comment, and who wants to go first?
My name is Melinda Marion, and I live just down the road from the property on Barbara Lane. My family members, Paul and Olita Allen, live right next door to the property at 9212 Brookville. Salem Planning Commissioners, the conditional use application before you tonight for LRS does not conform to the ordinances of Salem Township or Washtenaw Road Commission standards. Approval would put families at risk, destroy the character of our township, threaten home values in the area, and take away the right of all residents to enjoy their property. The applicant does not have the frontage on the flag lot, nor does he have access to a primary road, nor a commercial driveway. It is alarming to think that you might consider putting more traffic traveling at 55 miles an hour on Brookville and Weed Road during peak hours with children at bus stops. Inviting more transient workers into the neighborhood, threatening the safety and well-being of our community. There have been at least 8 home break-ins less than a mile from this property. Mr. Nanny, I have a video of you reporting to the Salem Planning Commission on how to handle landscaping businesses that are thriving and growing. This is your recommendation to the Planning Commission, word for word. You said, if his business is thriving, he probably needs to move his business into the industrial district where he can have those types of activities. This was a landscaping business in an AR district that had grown, just like LRS. LRS has outgrown its location. It's time for him to move to another district. The residence dwelling cannot be separated from the commercial business, as the business utilizes the electricity, the water, the garage, the driveway, and MIOSHA standards require that his workers have access to the bathroom facilities at the resident's home when there is a bathroom on site. Residents are concerned that the consultant's report may contain inaccuracies that do not reflect the character of the neighborhood or the interest of the residents. Please accept this petition from 50 Salem households representing 100 residents for inspection. They are requesting that the conditional use application for LRS be denied. This is for your inspection. Please also allow me to play a video for you. And this video is titled 6 a.m. Blade Grinding by LRS employees. This is what we hear every morning as they grind their blades. I will bring it up to you, but I would like everybody to hear what we hear in the morning. Okay. Oops. I can get it to play. While I'm doing that, maybe, Marcia, you want to come up and see if you can get it to run for me? You might know it better than I do. Who's good with these? Kurt? Maybe Kurt can here. There we go. You did. Oh, when I put that in, it doesn't want to play. Like this. Yeah, it was playing at home. Let me try again. This is what we hear every morning, 6 a.m. Grinding blades. And I have all kinds of documentation. You can see them out there at 6 in the morning. Their conditional use application states that they start at 7 o'clock. This is 6 a.m. I may not sound loud on the iPad, but I guarantee it carries all the way to Barbara Lane, which is much farther.
This will work now, let's just turn it off.
Oh.
Turn it on, it'll work.
Yeah, because it'll give you the full effect of what we hear. And it's much louder than that. As for items on the property, we have countless documentation of storage. Even after he supplies you with a continuational or a conditional application, there was on September 12th, we notified DTE again about composting on the site. October 16th, cleaning of his extreme green tanks on the property. October 10th, storage of turf fertilizer in the back of the truck on the property. So although he says he doesn't store, we have countless documentations of storage, and I will now just pass the iPad with the photos. You're welcome to look at their products, their trucks, and that would be the end of my comment tonight. Thank you.
All right, who's next? I got a woman in the back.
Good evening. Hello. My name's Marcella Brown. I live on Weed Road, 6111 Weed Road, which is the first house off North Territorial. Because Weed Road is an access to North Territorial, it gets a lot of traffic. It takes all the emergency vehicles that come through. It takes the school buses that come through. But it's been taking, at least over the summer, a lot of double tandem trucks that were hauling mostly dirt, I think. And they were filling in and doing, I thought one day about being Sherlock Holmes and following that truck, but I didn't. My concern always is going to be about the road. The road started out as Farmer Weed's path back to his barn, which was down close to the end of Weed by Brookville. And from that sheep path, it became a gravel road, and now it's like a thoroughfare. And it is not a road that can take a lot of beating. Plus it has a couple of driveways that are hard to see. And so anybody ripping up and down the road, it's a problem. And of course, it's difficult to put the brakes on a double tandem truck if something comes out front of them. Anyway, that's my concern. The condition of the road, keeping this traffic off Weed Road is why I came tonight. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Laura Jarvie. I'm at 9218 Brookville. I'm here also for some concerns. I am a resident of 3 years. I chose Brookville Road because it's not a mile road. I thought, oh, this is a nice rural community. It's dirt. This is the perfect setting for me. I have concerns about what might happen if he gets the conditional use. Already the trucks, it seems like there's more trucks, there's more lighting. I have concerns because of if his business, and that business kind of bothers me too, that business when I'm living in a residential area, if it's being screened from Brookville, it's not being screened from neighbors that are, nearby that can hear, can see. I mean, we're in that area because of the setting. I elected board members because of their promise to keep the rural community and environment. That's why I am here. That's why I'm living here. That's why I chose The road conditions are also a big concern. Last winter, they were horrible. There's gonna be extra wear and tear with the vehicles, coming up and down, same as the other resident. There's no full-time resident at that house, so it's almost like it's becoming just business, and there's no one living there, so there's less care about the surrounding, residents who actually live there. So that is a concern too. I don't think anyone lives there full-time. So as a resident, a newer resident, those are my concerns.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, I'm Justin Morningstar. I live at 6324 Wheat Road. The back of my property oversees through another property, the property in question. Few comments I want to say when we were talking about the application. It was saying normal business hours. I think she had a very good display of what it's like in the morning. I think that was a later start than average. I hear it very early. I'm a school teacher, so I'm up early in the morning. I have a lot of time off, so I'm home quite often. That goes 24 hours a day at this property. I hear diesel trucks running all night during the winter especially. I hear grinding. I see employees urinating out in the open. I've tried contacting someone at the address before. The one employee I talked to wasn't very friendly about passing me on to somebody I could talk to. I've never gotten a hold of anybody by knocking on the door. I moved out to this area because I wanted peace and quiet. I moved out of the city to be in a rural community because that's the promise that was on all those signs during the elections. And I live next to a construction site right now. This isn't just simple landscaping, this isn't cutting lawns. This is heavy equipment running out there, being parked on the property line, pushing it back, pushes it away from one neighbor, pushes it closer to another. So something really needs to be done about this, because that's why we moved out here, was to have a rural community. I mean, farming, that's different. Farming's not having machines running all night. Farming's not having storage, repair, all this stuff I witness. I can look out my back window and see it. On top of having light shining right onto my property through another property. That's how bright these things are. So it goes through a complete other property and it's mine. So something needs to be done about this. And we're really gonna drop the ball for our entire community if we allow this. Because this is why people move here. So thank you for your time.
Yes, sir, in the back.
Chuck Phillips, 6587 Lapham Court. And I maybe have a unique perspective on this. I'm in the same type of business. And I operate my business in Westland. We have a commercial location in Westland we operate out of. And as a resident, I mean, I can certainly put myself in the shoes of the applicant, certainly as a resident. I moved out here for the same reasons. I've been here almost 12 years now, and peace and quiet. Bottom line. I have the same business, and again, I can feel for the applicant here, but as a resident, it's a loud business. Sharpening blades is a loud endeavor compared to, as you suggested, a mechanic pulling a motor. I'd rather have a mechanic pulling a motor than listening to blades sharpen at 6 in the morning. And that's just factual. I just found out about this the other day. I haven't really had a chance to research the zoning, which I'm curious about, and I have a lot of questions, but so I'm not really educated on that, and I certainly will, but I guess from a standpoint of just common sense and basic courtesy to your neighbors, it's a loud business, whatever the equipment is. And I one of the signs I think that's on Brookville Road is a no truck sign. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's got the picture and I've always wondered what that meant, because that's what's loud. Trucks are loud, cars are not that loud. Trucks with trailers, like equipment on the trailers, that's loud. So, it's an issue of, do you wanna live next door to that? And I wouldn't, and I don't. I really don't hear much down there. I'm relatively close, but I do hear the trucks every day. They're coming and going. It's like clockwork, and they're loud, and you know when they're coming, and it's just loud. So, without knowing the zoning ordinances and all the technical, I'm reserved on some of my comments, but suffice to say, it is a loud business, and you just cannot get around it. I don't care if you're in retail, if you don't have retail, if you store whatever you store, it's loud, and that's the issue, and I guess that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
My name is Joanne Levens, and my address is 6282 Apple Ridge Drive, and I've lived there for almost 34 years, okay? I am not opposed to him having the landscaping business, but what is that gonna open the door for? Other businesses, more noise? And I beg to disagree with the gentleman at the end here. He said all those trucks are the same as farm equipment. No, it's not. Farm equipment sticks to your own property. I've got 5 acres. My tractor stays there. It does not go up and down Brookville Road or Weed Road. And my main concern is, who's gonna take care of resurfacing that road? Washtenaw County seems to think Salem does not exist. I can count on one hand the times they have plowed it or graded it. And every year it's been less and less and less. Do they have the equipment to grade it? I doubt it. And another concern of mine is, Brookville Road is a bus line for the school.
Yes.
What are you gonna do for the kids? Are they gonna get run over by these big trucks coming through there? They're probably doing 50 miles an hour at least. And I can attest to that, because if there's an accident on M14 or North Territorial, they take over Brookville Road and becomes Brookville Freeway. And they do 90 miles an hour down there, because I've been out there when they've been doing it. And I'm opposed to this, I don't oppose to somebody making a living. Why couldn't he have rented some land somewhere else down the road and put his business there, not in a residential, quiet farm country? Thank you. By the way, here's a picture of that sign. I took it this morning. No trucks.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, and as we go along here, no, that's fine, you there. I'll just say that if you wanna voice your opinion, you could say it, to make it simple, you could say, I agree with what so-and-so and so-and-so said, and then just provide, different information for us where you have that as well, or you can go ahead and use your time. It's fine.
Thank you. My name is Louis Wright, 6829 Brookside Lane. Sandy and I moved out in 1985. We love the community, and this is a precedent that we're afraid of. If you're a landscape company, you can keep how many trucks out on your land as long as you have 5 acres now? Is that what I read? It's not 10 acres, it's 5 acres. You can have as many trucks as you want parked in clear sight in a residential community. If you pass this, would you want that next to you? And we're close. I mean, we just got people moved in. They're landscapers, good people. But once you allow 5, 6, 7 trucks and high-rise, those lift buckets and bulldozers, do you want that next to your house? Because that's what you're going to set here. A precedent where that's not only allowed, it's legal. So I just don't know why you do that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
D. Davy, 8849 Brookville Road. My husband and I have been a resident in Salem Township for 8 years on Brookville Road, this lovely rural community. Just to give the Planning Commission a visual representation of the people who are opposed to the business operating in Brookville Road, would I ask everyone in this room who is opposed to this business operating to please stand and raise your hand. Thank you.
I counted about 35 hands anyways. Okay. In the back with the red shirt, or maroon shirt, I guess.
My name is Dennis Rose, 9068 Brookville. I live on the west side of Lattimans, have lived there since 1981. When Ray started this, it was Ray and possibly one other person. Now we've got 2 medium-duty trucks or 3. We have trailers. The lights are on all the time. I'm not one to complain, but his compost pile is actually 2 foot higher than my property. That's how much leaves and trees and stuff they've dumped in there. I'd like to get out of this community, but who wants commercial property next to my house? I used to get up at 3:30 in the morning to go to work. His big trucks are running, idling, the salt trucks, at 3 o'clock in the morning. There's no reason for all of this. I moved out here to live in a residential community, and then I get something that wants to be rezoned as commercial. That's not gonna do any good for us. Plus I have a pond, and I don't know what leaches into that, or what runs off of his property. And all the property, Justin's, everybody around, it all drains into my pond, because we're at the low point in the back. So that's my 2 words and 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Yes.
If you allow me to kind of reminisce a little bit. Tom Hammers Jr. lived in Salem Township for 47 years. I grew up on West 7 Mile Road between Napier and Chubb Roads over here in Township. I now live at Brookville, 9220, and have been there on the 2.1 acres for the past 17 years. Besides calling this home, my wife and I truly enjoy raising a family of 4 sons in the township. I have loved the country and rural setting that the township offers. In fact, one of my son's school friends, who lives in Canton, when he would come out to our house would say, "I think I have to drive to Narnia." I'm sure for many of you, if not all of you, one of the main reasons you moved to Salem was because you didn't want to deal with the big city life and saw Salem as a community that could offer a more laid-back lifestyle, yet not have to drive miles and miles to a city office or a store. Years ago, my father, Mr. Thomas Hammers Sr., served on this very commission as chairman. He also had the opportunity to run for township supervisor because he too loved this community and the country living it offered. Back then, the leadership of the township prided itself on being a rural, peaceful place to live. They understood that the people, longtime residents, and new members of the community also cherished this lifestyle, and therefore oversaw the interest of all Salem to help maintain the unique character that the Salem Township is known to provide the residents. I do believe that this feeling and desire still holds true today, and that the spirit of a rural, peaceful place to live is still what drives many for the passion that you see from these people here today. And also, I would hope from you that serve on this committee. Having stated this tonight, you have before you an application for a conditional use permit for a landscape and property maintenance business on a piece of property that's currently zoned residential agricultural. Understand that I am not against the small business, or for that matter, a landscape business, as I work for a landscape business run out of a residence over on Ford Road in Canton as a way to pay for my college. However, I am against a business that is continuing to grow in an area that is zoned residential agricultural, that has no regard for the neighbors or the communities around them. What benefit does this type of business to our rural township? What does it provide? For a peaceful setting? For a country living? A business that is owned by an individual who doesn't even live in the township? A business that has several employees commuting to and from the business location daily on a rural country road, meaning increased traffic volumes that normally would not be there. A business that has large trucks and trailers with landscape equipment that must travel on these very same roads that our residents and even our children ride and walk their bikes. A business that is located directly across from the recently purchased land preservation, which is what you, as this board, has purchased to try to maintain that rural setting. Having said that, I do have just a couple of questions that I want this committee to respond to, hopefully during your discussion. In item 5 of the counselor's report, conditional use standards for consideration, says the advisor's comments say, the land use is consistent with the goals and policies of the master plan for this area of the township. I guess I'm wondering how this can be consistent with the goals and policies of the township when it's located on a rural road, not a primary road, in a neighborhood that is zoned residential agricultural and is located across from a land preservation parcel the township deemed they needed to buy to avoid having further development there and wanting to maintain that rural setting. The second one, item 3, I didn't have the page numbers, I apologize, but standards for landscape business, section 3.06 says dwelling. It reads, please note that a home occupation standards in section 40.204 do not apply to the landscape business, as this is a separately regulated land use in the zoning ordinance. Although I would disagree, I understand that the zoning ordinance for a landscape business does not fall underneath this home occupation. However, wouldn't you agree that the spirit in which the home occupation ordinance section is written was to control growth and minimize the township from becoming another Canton or Livonia community where you have business and development on every corner? Can you, the commission, please explain to the people here what that difference would be? How can that be? By approving this conditional use permit, I challenge the commission to explain to the people what benefit this business has for our township and why it would be acceptable to allow such a large operation to run on this parcel that is currently zoned residential agriculture. Thank you.
Other customers?
I have one more comment. I don't know if you read it in the book that I provided to you, but under the master plan, Brookville Road is a natural scenic beauty road. The residents have petitioned Washtenaw Road Commission to make it official through Washtenaw County. But if you look under the master plan for special corridors, it says that we have an obligation to protect those in our community. So you need to be aware that Brookville is a scenic natural road based on the master plan.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Penny Hannawald. My husband Norm and I, we live at 6409 Weed Road. We've lived in Salem Township since 1977. We've raised 3 children here. We now have 2 little grandchildren who come to visit with us. There are small children that live on the corner where we live. My concern is what has already been voiced about the trucks on the road, the conditions of the road, and also the school bus route. We did move out here to have it be rural, as everyone has stated. So I just really wanted to add my opinion and voice that we totally agree with that. We would hope that a commercial business would be denied. We do not want it here.
Yes.
When I get to go up there.
Maureen Carey, 9237 Brookville. And just real quick, people have mentioned the bus issue, but what no one's capturing is how pitch black it is when the high schoolers are out there, when these people are coming to work. And the kids aren't wearing reflective gear, they're high schoolers. And I really am concerned for their safety with so much people coming to work, not residents, on our street.
I had one more concern. My concern too is that he doesn't live here. You know, he's running a business, he doesn't live here.
Okay, going once, going twice. That's the end of public comment. At that point, I'm ready for a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
We have a second. So I guess we're ready for a roll call vote.
Oh, no, the number on it.
Pardon?
Aren't we gonna ask our questions?
Oh, no, we have a business item
Oh, okay,
coming up.
okay.
After we
Okay.
get the public hearings in, and the other one, and then we get into the business
Okay.
portion of the agenda. All right? So I think we're all on the same page. That's good. But we need a roll call vote.
Casey Kelly,
Yes.
TJ McLaughlin.
Yes.
Pam Merlo, yes. Daryl Lewandowski,
Yes.
Daniel Vergari,
Yes.
Doug Shepherd.
Yes. So we're closing the public hearing at 8:22. That clock's not right. Okay. Now, we have another public hearing for tonight. And that is a conditional use application. It's item 14005. It's presently vacant property.
I had a phone call from a Mr. Polson.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He was opposed to allowing this operation to go on 9130 Brookville. I just want to get it on the record.
So that was,
Gary Polson,
those were concerns as well.
yes. I had a phone call and he wasn't very agreeable with it, so. I want to make sure that comment was put into the public hearing.
So we'll consider that part of the public comment. All right. I got ahead of myself there.
I'm sorry.
All right, now we have the conditional use application for vacant property on Salem Road between 5 and 6 Mile to operate a landscape maintenance property business. And so, this is in a general industrial district. And I guess my question is, have the appropriate notices gone out to the residents in the paper and signage on this one?
Yes, it has.
They have. Okay, so I'd like to make the motion that we open the public hearing related to item 14005, conditional use on the vacant property on Salem Road between 5 and 6 Mile to operate a landscape maintenance property business. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, then we're ready for a roll call vote.
TJ McLaughlin,
Yes.
Pam Merlo, yes. Daryl Lewandowski,
Yes.
Daniel Vergari,
Yes.
Casey Kelly,
Yes.
Doug Shepherd.
Yes. All right, so we've opened that public hearing at 8:24. And we'll start out by, it's the same procedure as the last one, so is the applicant here to make a presentation? Yes.
That is very tough to follow up, I will say that. Wow. But I do want to make very clear that this is general industrial, 24 and a half acres, surrounded by general industrial. I plan to live on the parcel. My brother just moved into Salem Township. We've leased general industrial, so we've been trying to do it right from Virgil Foley for over 20 years. And so I just want to make that very clear to start off, that we're taking the steps to do it in the right area. And matter of fact, I've talked to both Tim and Barb Dobson, who are in a predicament, who have a residence on 24 and a half acres that used to be owned by the Parhams. This property was split up into two. And prior till this last December, when you all made a decision, which I think was a great decision, because there's about 12 homes on general industrial property between Salem, Chubb, 5 Mile, and 6 Mile here. And so it puts everybody in a predicament, but you've offered protection for them if they were to sell their home and so forth, or if they need to rebuild. We've been back and forth a little bit on that and still going back and forth on it. I'm trying to take into consideration their concerns as well, because even though they're on general industrial, they still live there. And so, anyways, with that said, we are on general industrial, larger piece of property. We do the same thing as this gentleman over here. My computer is linked to a server which went down, so I could not print off my letter or anything else, my outline or anything that I had, so I'm just going to go off what I have. This has been a family business. I've been doing this since I was 9 years old, literally. Our first lawnmower bought from Alan Saxon. I will say we have not gone the direction of increasing things tremendously. Matter of fact, I run 3 vehicles, the largest of which is a 1-ton, 3-yard, dual rear-wheeled dump truck. And that's it. That's the largest of the vehicles. It's all residential, so we don't have the large equipment. We do one church in Northville, the Nazarene Church up there. We do Gatco Company in Plymouth, Arbor, Maine, which is a very small building, and that's it for commercial. We take care of Fleming Meadow subdivision off of Ann Arbor Road, and I think that's it. Everything else is residential. It's not the money maker, but it's worked for us. We're quality conscious. I run 3 employees this year. That's it. Foreman's been with us 16 years, and we've worked for people such as the mayor of the city of Plymouth, vice president of Kurgan, some people that really are recognizable names that are quality conscious, that want it done right, and it's just worked for us to stay small. I work outside of that as well, so it's not my primary income, but it is something that's necessary from what we were told within this zoning district. And the need for space is there, as in the letter submitted to you recently. I've been doing some industrial roofing. Don't let that industrial scare you though. This year, I worked a little bit with that, and it's liquid coatings, a lot of it. The hope would be to get into a little bit of metal roofing, but there would be there's room needed for storage. And right now, I run out of a very small spot with about 4 other landscapers, less than a half a mile from where I'm proposing, right out of Virgil Bowley's place. And we've been there for over 20 years, leased land from him. And so, with the need for a little bit more space, with what some of these folks had said, 8 break-ins, I can testify to that. Highland Landscaping, about 5 years ago, their trucks were on blocks and all the wheels gone. My stuff was hit badly last year, and it cost me a few $1,000s anyways, my insurance, my co-pays, there you go. I'm scared because of all these people. Wow. But nonetheless, I presented to Ronnie the fact that, hey, I like this property. It's got 2 pieces of water on it. I like this space. It's got some beautiful mature pine trees that apparently the Parhams planted way back. I don't want to demolish them. I don't want to do what the used to be DeLuca, but it's now anyways, the company over there on the corner of Chubb and 6 Mile, Kalo and Sons, they wiped out that. And someone could come into this beautiful parcel, which I have pictures of, and I didn't bring in my board, I didn't know how necessary it was, and can obliterate those trees and all the rest. My plan is to do as low impact as possible. Matter of fact, the trees we marked, I hate that some of them would have to be moved, but low impact as possible, and maintain the setting as much as possible while I live there to help protect the property as much as possible. Same town my family is in, and operate this business, and being there would be other activity possibly there, as stated in the letter, with some storage items and so forth. It's permitted within the use, and we're trying to find property that allows for such. That's large enough to provide a buffer. Again, working with Brad Barb and Tim, saying, hey, you have a beautiful place, you know, we'll try to do what we can to minimize any impact and, yes, stay within your requirements for zoning. It's tough finding something that would work for this type of situation. And my wife and I have a 1-year-old, and we have chickens and things like that. And so if there's not too many, don't worry, it doesn't fall within the agricultural. But nonetheless, we need to get out of where we're at. They're building across the street. They're expanding. They're building condos next to us. We have just over an acre, about an acre and a half, and it's just time to do something different while maintaining some of what we have presently, but falling within the regulations that you all have proposed. And we do like the idea of a more rural setting. That's why we're proposing, as you can see on that plan, which I'll show it to you unless you have it in front of you. It's a very minimal footprint, extremely minimal. And so we have 800 feet of road frontage compared to the 300 that we need. We need 5 acres to operate. It's 24 and a half acres. And so that was our thought.
All right, thank you. Mr. Gannon,
Well, thank you.
you reviewed this too.
We reviewed this application as well. You should all have a report, conditional use permit report dated October 13th, 2014. You also should have a second report, it's the same date, on the preliminary site plan. We'll talk about that a little more, I think, under the action item. But for the purpose of our public hearing tonight, we'll work with the conditional use permit report. As the applicant stated, this is general industrial property. It is certainly rural in character. Salem Road is also a local road, as designated by the county in this area south of the hamlet. So we have the same rules apply, section 40.107. The same rules apply to this property as they did to the other one. It's as with the other action item. This is also conditional use, even in the general industrial district. What I will say is that this activity, while the applicant said that it's a small footprint, and that's true, on 24 acres, they're proposing to disturb a fairly limited area. This is a more intensive activity than our last item, because they are proposing substantial outside storage, including outside storage of mulch and other loose items. Because it is a larger site, it has significantly greater potential to grow into something more. And being general industrial, there is great leeway to allow future growth for this activity on this particular site. As was mentioned, that they are proposing both a landscape operation, which is the conditional use item. In addition, they're proposing outside storage, which is permitted in this district. There's no public hearing required for that. This metal fabrication activity related to roofing that will go on the site, as well as the home. Now, this is the interesting thing about the home here is that we have the opposite case from our previous item, in that here the home is secondary to the business operation. We do allow what the ordinance would refers to as an accessory dwelling or a caretaker's residence on general industrial property in association with a business. The business has to be there, has to be operating for the home to be there and occupied. So our page 2 of our report reviews those same standards in section 40.107. We did note, as we'll talk about with the site plan report, that there are details that are needed. This application is a little different in that we require, for any industrial property, we require a full site plan review. That's preliminary and final site plan with engineering details, and the reason for that is that more can happen in general industrial than can happen in the rural districts. The rural district use is much more limited. We just made notes here that there are details required related to exactly what is going to be in the outdoor storage area, and the dimensions of that area need to be identified on the plan specifically. We also made note that that additional screening may be needed. This property has a lot of vegetation on it, a lot of mature trees, as well as a lot of low vegetation. It's possible that what's on the site right now may be sufficient to meet the ordinance standard, but there's not sufficient detail in the plan to document that. So we need to either have additional landscaping and screening shown on the plan, or documentation of exactly what's on the site right now and how that meets the ordinance. Here again on page 3 and 4 of our report, we have the standards for conditional use approval, the same ones as applied to the other activity. We did note that item 4 in this little list, talks about impacts, dust and odor and noise and such. We did note that this activity has greater potential for impacts, mainly because of the outdoor storage, but that, of course, it is in the general industrial district, and neighboring properties at front on Chug Road are substantially more intensive in character, and so we found that this activity would not be anywhere near what is already allowed in the general industrial district, or what's already operating on neighboring properties in the district, in terms of potential impacts. Finally, at the end of our report, we noted that the conditional use application is ready for your review from the basis of a land use perspective, but the preliminary site plan is not sufficient. That's what our other report talks about. There's items of information they're missing. We are comfortable with recommending that the conditional use permit be reviewed. You can choose, if you wish, to take action on it separate from the site plan, or you can choose to postpone action until you have a more complete preliminary site plan with those additional details on it. The main reason why we are comfortable allowing this to go forward separately is because all the details will be dealt with on the final site plan. The preliminary site plan is essentially conceptual in nature, but really the rubber will hit the road with the final site plan. That's where everything has to be on it. And so we're comfortable with moving this forward at this time, knowing that we're going to get more detail in that final site plan stage when that comes back to us. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, I follow along. I'm sorry? Not at this moment.
Can I answer
We have
that
our
question?
Review.
Can I answer your question real quick?
When we have our review, there would be 2 elements to it. One would be discussing the conditional use, and the second one would be preliminary site plan review, perhaps. Yeah, because it says and preliminary site plan review on the agenda, so we would get into that and we can split up the action. It's okay. All right. At this point, we're ready for public comment related to this conditional use application. Is there anyone that would like to raise their hand and speak? I got it.
D. Davy, 8849 Brookville Road, and Planning Commission, I just want to express an observation. And that observation is the spirit of goodwill demonstrated by applicant 14-005 in contrast to the destructive business behavior already demonstrated by applicant 14-004, in particular noise, light, hours of operation, and dumping. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Blue shirt.
Yeah, my name is Tim Dobson. We live at 7572 Salem Road, the adjacent property to the proposed change in plans here. And would second the lady's comment on the goodwill that Jamie has shown by coming up to our property, telling us his idea, his plan, his dream. We've lived there. We've got pristine property. And to tell the truth, when we moved here 29 years ago, I could swear that it was light recreational zoning, and I don't know what ever happened to the zoning. I'd love to find these old maps somewhere. there is some trepidation on our part as we heard that this gentleman's proposal and your review of that proposal, it sounded like, hey, it's a good thing going. And then we heard the opposition, and it's frightening. So I would just, you know, I really truly believe that this is Jamie's dream to build his business and build his family in this community in a way that is supportive to the community and supportive to us as neighbors to him. And we want to maintain that relationship with him. And so far, he has shown nothing other than that. So I'd like to thank him for that. And we would still be very interested in what's coming ahead as far as the details of this plan, hours of operation, noise levels, traffic, you know, a buffer between our property and his property. Again, we've lived in this pristine property for so long. It's just a blessing to us, and we would like that maintained and our feelings known. Thank you.
Anyone else? We have correspondence.
Salem Township Planning Commission. My name is William Munch. I am the owner of the property bordering the east of the property, and he gives his tax ID number. And my property has many artesian wells which feed into the Rouge River watershed. The Washtenaw County Drain Commissioner has no record or knowledge of said storm drain. I am concerned about what will be discharged into my property and into the pristine watershed. Please contact me if you have any questions. Thank you, William Munch.
Okay. All right, going once, twice, thrice. That should be the end of public comment, and so now we're open to a motion to close the public hearing related to this topic.
Make a motion to close this public hearing.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay. Ms. McLaughlin, has a second. And our roll call vote again.
Cam Burlow, yes. Casey Kelly,
Yes.
TJ McLaughlin,
Yes.
Darrell Lewandowski,
Yes.
Daniel Vergari,
Yes.
Doug Shepherd.
Yes. Okay, so we're closed the public hearing for item 14005 at 8:43. All right, so the questions, are we ready to go, or do we need a 2-minute break?
Take a 2-minute break.
2-minute break? All right, we're gonna try and take a 2-minute adjournment. I could use a short break.
Wonder where Furman was tonight.
So now we come to business item 7A, which is our discussion of the conditional use and minor site plan review for 9130 Brookville Road. And I know we all have some questions, and so I'm ready for someone to kick things off. I think Mr. Vergari wanted to go first here, if I remember.
I guess also this I'm going to address to Mr. Nanny. The issues that was brought up tonight about the noise, and you know, under the zoning code, shall not, you know, noise is one of the things that's mentioned, you know. Okay, so also the impact on the neighborhood, you know, what, you know, it can't have a substantial negative impact on the neighborhood, you know, and I just wondered, I mean, you did the research on this, maybe you can is it compatible with the other residents in the area, that type of operation? You know, this is all part of the code, the language spells this out for conditional use.
To answer your question,
How do you determine whether it has a negative impact on the value?
That's an excellent question, because that's really the crux of the action tonight, is really that list of items, standard for conditional use approval. And to some extent, they're a bit subjective by nature. It is, what we are reviewing, when we review this application, we're reviewing what was submitted by the applicant for what they propose to do. And I recognize this is an operation that has been there for quite a number of years, and it has been operated however it has been operated in the past. But what we're reviewing is what they are proposing to do. And that's essentially what's contained on this minor site plan and the other application materials that have been presented to you tonight. And as presented on this plan, this is an activity that has been designed in a way that minimizes its potential impacts on the neighbors in several ways. One, right now, we recognize that the existing operation essentially takes place in the open air in front of the existing home on the site. You know, about halfway up the driveway, there's a large area where trucks are parked, where employee cars are parked, and it's all out in the open and all very much in the exposed area of the site. This application proposes to place all the activity at the south end of the property and place it primarily inside of a new pole barn building on the property that would meet all the ordinance requirements. So it changes the character of the operation. The note is that there are notes related to hours of operation. I know it was mentioned that there was activity, you know, at wee hours in the morning. This proposes hours of operation of 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Spring, summer, and fall. Winter hours 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. I recognize that this may not be what has been experienced out there. I don't live in Brookville Road, so I don't know what has been experienced out there. I certainly have heard you know, a lot of comments both tonight and previous to tonight. But what we're reviewing in our report is what's proposed. And if this is approved, this becomes then the Bible for what can happen on that site. And so if they are outside of these restrictions, then they're in violation of the ordinance and are subject to the penalties that come into play when you're in violation of the ordinance. The land use itself is, there are restrictions that are proposed by the applicant are extensive, and they do limit this activity in a way that we felt is consistent with the standards that apply to it in the conditional use standards. However, we are a recommending consultant here. This is why we have you as a planning commission, because these decisions should be made by the residents of the community, and so we simply make our best review in terms of what are the issues and what are the requirements, and provide that information to you to then render a decision. So I'm happy to answer questions in more depth, but as I said, the key here is that we're reviewing the application, not necessarily the history.
Okay. And if anything's done outside of what's proposed for the land use, that's subject to rescission, right?
Yeah, there's several things that come into play here actually related to restrictions.
Could be changed, or?
Yeah, I mean, they're proposing to abandon that area up in front where the activity was taking place. No business activity other than the trucks using the driveway to exit and enter can take place in that area in the front. The business activity is restricted to the south end of the site. Any increase in activity, you know, any increase in the area of the activity beyond what's shown here, addition to the building, you know, other changes related to the business from what is described in the application would require the applicant to come back to you again for an amended approval, which would require a new public hearing. So So this really sets out the rules under which this business would operate going forward if the conditional use permit is approved.
Go more.
No, I'm set.
I have 3 questions to ask. First one to the applicant. If you return to the location in the afternoon or early evening, and you bring any waste material, where do you dump it?
At Salem, originally we had some leaves and whatnot that we kept on the property we brought in to fill an area, and it was decided that we could do that if we pull permits from the state of Michigan. I had a meeting with the DEQ about it, but it's too involved to do that. I'd have to open up basically a compost business to do it, but from a state level it's permitted, so we opted to close that off. Met with that gentleman again from the DEQ up in Lansing and explained to him we're not doing it. He visited the property with township officials. They took notice that no activity's been taking place on that property, and we've been taking all our disposal right here to Salem Township waste facility here where they do their composting. So all those materials have been going there. We do have receipts and what haven't shown we've been taking them there.
Thank you. Mr. Nanny, it was brought up that Brookville is a beautification road. Is it a beautification road or a scenic road? What's the definition?
Well, the master plan includes a component that talks about the character of roads, and it does identify Brookville as a road that has a scenic character, which of course it does. It's a very beautiful road to drive down in stretches of it. That designation of the master plan has no regulatory effect. It's simply an existing condition that's noted in the plan. What was discussed tonight is a process for approval by the County Road Commission of what's referred to as a natural beauty road. This is a status that can be granted by the county. 2 roads that have a certain character, and it's primarily related to vegetation along the road right of way. Heavily vegetated, there are standards that the county has related to percentages of native vegetation, native trees. They don't want to have a lot of invasive species in there, but they really wanted a natural native Michigan type of trees and vegetation along the road. It also looks at topography, changes in the road that give it the character under which their standards would apply. Approval by the County Road Commission of a natural beauty road status really only actually affects the County Road Commission from a regulatory standpoint. If that status is granted, the Road Commission alters somewhat how they treat the road in terms of, primarily in terms of tree trimming, road ditching maintenance, and mowing along the margin of the road. They alter how they do that based on that status. Otherwise it is a voluntary status. There's no regulatory effect on township residents or the township itself. If property owners along the road were to cut the trees down, they might then lose that natural beauty road classification. There's no restriction on what people can do with their property based on it.
Now, would that give Brookville from Curtis to Goffredson, or just from Weed Road to Curtis? Because when you go east of Weed, I mean, the vegetation is nothing like what it is west of Weed.
Yeah, it's really up to the County Road Commission. I don't know what's been applied for. I did hear that the application was being put together. I don't know if an application has been submitted or what the county might be reviewing. But the county standards for designated road as a natural beauty road are pretty restrictive. They don't want to just simply put that status on any road. And so my suspicion is that they would limit it to those stretches that fit their criteria. Even if more is applied for, they may only approve part of it.
Okay. May I ask Melinda a question?
Sure.
Okay. Melinda.
Yes.
Out of, I know this is kind of a hot topic. How many handwritten signed complaints are on record either at the county or the township here?
They're in the booklet that I gave you. If you look at the booklet that you have, in 2012, Doug Shepard, our chair today, provided the first complaint to Salem Township against LRS. The township took no action. At that time, the requirement was that the landscape company had to have 10 acres. Had the Salem Township taken action at that time, he would have had to depart the property because 10 acres was the requirement. They did not enforce on the property at that time, and then in May 2014, my parents put in a complaint, and then June 10th, 2014, 9 residents submitted complaints to the Salem Township Board requesting that LRS cease operation at the property and remove their equipment until we could have a hearing with the township about this because they were concerned. On June 10th, 14 residents submitted complaint forms to the board requesting the board to investigate and take action concerning the complaint of May 6th. So we have had complaints, and as far as the Natural Beauty Road, I wanted to tell you that has been submitted from Goffredson to Curtis along Brookville. It required 25 signatures. I've got 40-some signatures. I met with the road commission. We not only have scenic areas of Brookville Road, we have historic sites with a home from the 1800s, and we have additionally barns that are very old that qualify as part of the scenic road. And now with the park, we have scenic vistas, and there's a whole write-up that's on file with Donna and the township about the request. They were very welcoming to it. It would put a speed limit on Brookville of 25 miles an hour.
Thank you.
Who wants to go next? Casey?
I have lots of thoughts, but no questions.
Questions for the applicant? When I was there, I noticed the employee parking was about adjacent from the neighbor's garage. Is that planning on staying there, or since you're moving everything in the back, I see it's still kind of right there. Could that be moved to the back?
That has been moved. We showed it just on the drawing because it's what you have there on your survey. But the parking's been spelled out on there and shows where we're gonna have the 4 spots for 4 employees to park with a green belt around it. So yeah, that area has been eliminated for parking and moved back. So it is, in the future, some of the things you've heard are things that have happened in the past. The township approached me and said, this is the concerns we have, will you bring a plan to us? I said, fine. So we discussed it with the township, and we developed a plan how to make this work. And the parking issue was one of them, and said, can you move the parking? Yeah, we can move the parking.
And for the snow removal hours, generally snow removal, a lot of times it's in the middle of the night and all that. I'm curious how you have the winter hours to be 8 a.m. to 7 p.m.
8 a.m. That's for coming and going. We primarily, with our biggest trucks, we don't have any tandem trucks. We got all one rear axle trucks. The biggest we have is 650. Doug, you've seen that truck that was out there. We've got a total of 5 trucks on the property. The diesel trucks we have 3 of those, one 550 and 2 F50 and F350, and they're pretty quiet. They're almost as quiet as a gas engine. So the newer diesels are just stealth. I got one out if you want to go listen to it. It's just incredibly quiet, the new one. And you're asking about the hours operation. We typically take our salt truck drivers, Tony being one of them, would take a vehicle at home at night. I said, look, maybe late, let's just start taking vehicles home at night. You take one either up to the office or take one home and leave from home and go salt. And it wasn't always a practice. And Rodney talked to me about it a little bit. He says, you gotta do something about that. I said, fine, we'll move all the snow removal equipment off the property and have it during the day hours and we come back with it. So we'll move it off in the evening. If we have to do our snow removal at night, we'll do it off-site without having to come at night to pick equipment up. So we'll move that, that is our move time is during the day. So we're not bothering people in the evening.
Okay.
And I know it may seem odd, but it's logical. People don't want us coming up and down the driveway at night. We'll just move them during the day. There's 5 trucks in total, so it's not a big operation. It's been the same size for 20 years, 5
No,
trucks.
we disagree. There's a lot of us that disagree.
Okay, and my next question
come on.
is,
We're asking questions, we're not opening up the general debate.
to Rodney, well, actually, one more. So the business, you say, has been the same, it hasn't grown?
No, we've kept it the same. I've only wanted to get so big. It's just like this gentleman we were talking. You get to a level, you want to stay there. Any more gets to be too much. We're at a level where we've been happy with for some time.
And so how many employees do you have?
I have anywhere between 5 and 9 employees, depending what time of year it is. And right now, with it being slow, we're down to 5.
Okay, thank you. Rodney, how would, after we talked about the beautification road and the natural beauty road and the difference, how, and I think I heard the answer, but just to be clear, how would the if this were to be designated as a natural beauty road, how would that impact Mr. Lanneman's business? What would change? What would be different?
Well, I suppose if the speed limit were reduced, obviously, there'd be a lower speed of traffic on the road for his trucks and as well as anybody else's. As I said, in terms of the requirements related to trees and vegetation along the road, the primary character of the road, those are voluntary on property. Those property owners certainly can do things to enhance that if they want. They can plant additional trees or maintain and prune the existing ones. But they have it has no regulatory effect on the property.
So for the trucks and the travel, he would still be allowed to do that, it's just that the speed limit would be 25.
Right, if the speed limit were to be changed, that would be really the only effect on those vehicles.
That's all the questions I have now.
Okay. Dan, you can go through again, this would be great.
Yeah, the sign with no trucks on the road, what is the implication of that?
I don't know the details of that. Donna may have some information, but my suspicion is that has more to do with the truck routes that truck traffic to the landfill. Those vehicles are supposed to follow certain routes, and neither Brookfield nor Weed are part of that routing system. And so my suspicion is those signs relate to that activity. And so hearing that double bottom haulers are going through there is important, I think. I made note of it to pass that information back, because that should not be occurring on that road, and none of those big haulers going to the landfill should go in that direction.
I noticed Plymouth has the same sign adjacent to Plymouth. There's no landfill trucks going down there, and they have a sign, no trucks.
Yeah. There are certain truck routes designated for these big vehicles, and it's not only the landfill, but it's also the industrial operations along in our industrial district here in Salem Township. But there are certain routes they are supposed to follow. I know there have been conversations that take place occasionally, especially as new drivers come into the process and don't know. But that is an issue that will be followed up on.
Question for Mr. Letterman. I want to make a note to you that the day after last meeting, I didn't go up and down your property, so I got the wrong person.
Oh, no, that was all right.
Yeah, that wasn't me. The question I have is, you hear a lot of complaints tonight about your employees.
Yeah.
Do you have plans to have a talk with your employees, such as things like urinating and doing things,
You know,
people have children in the area, and they're
Yeah.
kind of concerned about because you have a turnover of employees, I'm told, and a lot of times there are new people to the area, and so people have concern about their children,
Yeah.
things like that.
Well, there's been a lot of misnomers, one, and two, my mom does live there. It's not a home that's vacant, that nobody's living there. The guys are allowed to use her bathroom. She goes out, she talks with them, she makes the guys coffees in the morning. So, yeah, I mean, they do have facilities to use. I haven't been there, seen any of my guys doing it. I'm not gonna say no one has doing it. I haven't seen pictures of anybody doing it. And I don't have anybody that's been, and my guys know this, that indecent exposure leads to some serious ramifications to people when it comes to getting a job in the future, and they all know this. They know that they can't be doing that. I haven't experienced it and seen it myself. I haven't seen anybody doing that over there personally. And they do have a bathroom to use.
Do you have like a protocol for your employees as to how they're to manage themselves while they're on that property?
Well, no, basically what we do is we come in the morning, we pick up our equipment, and we leave. That is it. We may have a guy sharpening blades, and he should be in the garage doing that. We, as a rule, a guy will come in at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, and they'll start to check the mower, oil on the machines and whatnot. We start, our business hours start at 7, that's when everybody shows up. And they collect their equipment and they leave. Every now and then, somebody's there, it'll either be Tony or Richard, and they have the use of the home. But as a rule, we don't spend a lot of time there. We don't do our business there. Our business is out on the road.
I noticed you have a big front end loader.
Yeah, tractor, farm tractor.
Yeah.
Yeah. The tractor goes down the road, the trucks go down the road. Been there 25 years with trucks down the road. The guys understand, there's buses, there's pedestrians. We haven't so much as gotten a speeding ticket down that road. No one's ever been injured. We've had 2 truck tickets, and if you're in the trucking business, it's huge. The 2 truck tickets we've had, 25 years of trucking. Talk to any trucking facility. They'll tell you it's unheard of to have the record we got. We had a breakaway cable that was broke, and the battery was dead on the breakaway cable. That was the only 2 trucking tickets I've had in 25 years. So safety, yeah, we have a big role in safety. We have a manual that's 2 inches thick. We're part of PICS, which is a company out in California that helps keep us versed on being safe. One of the customers I work for require us to be in that program. So, and they'll audit us. Well, do you have this on safety? Do you have that on safety? If we don't have it, let's implement it. We'll give it to you, Ray. You give it to your employees, you have them sign forms. So yeah, they're conscious of their surroundings. And I haven't had complaints from consumers. I haven't had a neighbor approach me saying, hey Ray, I seen your guy out the other day and he was watering the daylilies out there. Can you talk to him? I haven't heard, this is the first I've heard of it. But yeah, they are taught how to conduct themselves. For the people that have been there, they see how clean we keep that place. It's immaculate. The stuff is very well organized. And yeah, we understand that they don't like seeing the equipment come and go and the guy's taking it. We're solving that by putting it into a barn.
Absolutely.
Could you explain to me the difference of what I heard several residents say about the hours of
Yeah, those are, I mean, on the, that you're watching there on the plan.
Yeah, where I see your hours of operation, 7 AM to PM.
Yeah, Rodney and I were talking, as well as some other township officials that said, you know, we go forward for this, if you wanna get into a continual use permit, you're gonna have to spell out hours. And he says, come up with hours and throw them at the board. Put them on your paper, show what you plan on doing in the future if you're gonna do the special use permit, conditional use permit. So we put them on there, and our hours of operation are 7 o'clock till, in the past, we'd be back at 9, 10 o'clock at night if we had to work late because of the weather. But Rodney said, you know, if we're gonna get the conditional use permit, you're going to have specific hours, you're gonna have to follow those. So he says, put them in writing, so if you do get it, because once operating the way you are now isn't gonna work in the future once you're granted this permit.
I'll go for a little bit. I was gonna start off by mentioning something, that's in Article 63, it's in the intent and scope, related to conditional uses, right? And I think everybody just needs to understand this, because this kind of sets us up for what the planning commission's role is here, right? And it says that the formation and enactment of this ordinance is based upon the division of the township into various zoning districts where certain mutually compatible uses are permitted by right. In addition to those permitted principal uses, there are certain other uses that may be essential or desirable for the welfare of the community and the citizenry or substantial parts of it. Such conditional uses are appropriate and not essentially incompatible with the uses permitted by right in the zoning district, but not at every or any location therein, or without restrictions or conditions being imposed by reason of special problems or issues presented by the use or its particular location in relation to neighboring properties, right? And so, you know, just from where I come from, it's like, there was a tremendous amount of thought and planning and deliberation that went into the establishment of the zoning ordinance. And the zoning ordinance says that in rural districts, which agricultural residential is a rural district, landscape businesses are conditional use. So it says, it envisions, to me, when I read that, and this is by way of just explaining to you how I think this through, it envisions that you can do these activities in agricultural residential districts. It also envisions that we can have residences in agricultural residential districts, and quite honestly, everybody in this township needs to understand what's allowed in an AR district when they build a private residence in such a district. Because all kinds of things can take place, including intense farming operations and a number of things. So, that's kind of my background, but that doesn't mean that I'm predisposed to anything. What I see is, when we come here for the conditional use, the applicant says, okay, I want to propose these restrictions on what I intend to do as part of the negotiating process for making it compatible in the district and the adjacent uses. And so we have the application here, and there's a tremendous amount of detail, and that's very good. And so now I'll get into some of the questions, because what I'm interested in is understanding how tightly this restricts what is proposed for the property, and I'm not clouding my judgment whatsoever by the activities that have taken place in the past under different conditions. This is a proposal to go forward, given a very detailed look on the part of the applicant at the zoning ordinance. And so, my first question, when I look at the map, here. What I'm wondering is, as I interpret this map, there's two elements to the business, maybe three, okay? One is driveway access. One is parking for up to 4 employee cars in a small lot. And the other is a pole barn. And when my question for both the applicant and for Mr. Nanny, does that mean that there will be no business activities conducted outside that pole barn, other than the parking of the employee cars and the use of the drive?
The activity that would be allowed under an approved conditional use permit would be exactly what is on the plan. So for example, there was an earlier question about the existing employee parking area and the area where the trucks have been parked up front. That would no longer be part of the business at all. Now, the homeowner could use those if she would park a car there, or a visitor could park it. That's her business. But in terms of the landscape operation, those would no longer be used because they're not on the plan to be used for the business. The business activity is noted on here that for example, there's 4 employee parking spaces outside, and it notes on the plan that any additional employee vehicles will be parked inside the pole barn during the day, which it can be done. That's a reasonable way to handle that, and it ensures that only 4 vehicles are going to be outside that are employee vehicles during the operational hours. This district does not allow for outdoor storage, so there would be no storage of materials outside. There are no notes on the plans related to any kind of outdoor storage or activities. It notes, for example, in the driveway area in front of the pole barn, it says proposed gravel driveway. Additional parking will be in the barn. So this gravel driveway is for bringing vehicles in and out. Now, those vehicles may be parked there during that transition. As they're backing trucks out, they may be parking a vehicle there or in the maneuvering process. But this is not an area where vehicles would be stored outside overnight or during non-operating hours. This is simply an area that's used as a driveway to move vehicles in and out of the barn, on and off the site. Yeah. So yes, the restrictions on the plan are very, very specific.
Okay, and would that also preclude, let's say, the outside maintenance activities of those vehicles and such?
Yeah, and that also was noted by the applicant, that the maintenance activities would be in the pole barn. And that's really the purpose of the pole barn, is to bring that activity inside where it is able to be controlled noise-wise and otherwise. Now, if a truck has a flat tire and the truck is out in the driveway, obviously they can change the tire. There's going to be some things that happen in front of that pole barn, but the land use must ultimately comply with this plan going forward.
Okay. So the outside isn't going to be used as a truck or trailer maintenance or landscaping equipment maintenance and repair area, even when the weather is nice. Okay. So that was my first question. Now here's another question that came to mind, and that is if this was a residential property, how large a pole barn could the owner build? Just for a completely residential use?
Yeah, in this district, they could build the same pole barn, and it would actually only require an administrative permit to do it.
So 60 by 120 or bigger, right? Like horse arenas and all that other stuff, right? Down 5 acres wouldn't be an issue.
That's right. And this property is large enough to have a pretty substantial agricultural operation on it if somebody chose to do that.
Yeah. Well, I see them all around, right? And buildings the size of 60 by 80 are common, or larger, in agricultural residential district. Yeah. And if it was a private residence and I built that kind of a pole barn, what screening would I have to provide?
None. None
None
whatsoever.
whatsoever. So the fact that we're going through a conditional use permit here for a landscape business that we're declaring as a landscape business requires us to screen a structure that otherwise wouldn't have to be screened.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, we'll keep moving on here. So, and some of this we've heard, but I wanna just be clear on a couple things. Let's do an easy one. When you say spring, summer, and fall operation, what calendar date do you mean defines spring through fall?
Well, it'll vary, it just depends on winter. Spring can start here as early as March. If we, like back in 2012, we had record-breaking temperatures and we were already out doing landscaping in March. Or last year, we were out doing snow removal clear into the first week of April. So it's sometime between mid-March and mid-April is when we would get out of winter and start spring. And then in the fall, between the end of November and somewhere in mid-December, we would start in the fall operation and start into the winter operation.
Yeah, okay, so you're really saying from first day of spring, the vernal equinox, is it? I can't remember. Right? But first day of spring to the first day of winter?
Right. Yeah, for the summer.
Well, no, but I'm trying to be specific here, because you're sitting down and you're saying this is the regulation that you're proposing. I just wanna know what calendar date goes with it. And we take that literally from the first day of spring to the last day of fall. And I understand it. I mean, to me, that's clear, okay. And when you say the hours of operation, that's the time frame in which the employees show up?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what the time frame employees would
So,
show up at the
there
park.
won't be any evidence of, outside the stated hours, there would be no evidence of trucks coming and going?
The only truck that would come and go would be to me to see my mom if I come to visit her or something, but for employees or anybody like that, no, we don't want no one there before then or after what they're supposed to, and typically I come during the middle of the day to see my mom. But, no, that's hours operation we are giving you, that's what we wanna go by, and keep people happy with it. It's been informed to me that if we breach these hours we've given, then our conditional use permit could be removed from our possession.
Yeah, so our expectation would be that the employee parking spaces would be empty outside those hours.
Correct. Unless family was visiting or staying in.
Or from the employee standpoint.
Employee standpoint, yes, they would be.
I'm just trying to understand
Right.
what's proposed.
Right.
And I think that's what it says here, and I'm just, asking for clarification.
Right.
Okay, so, you said you have 5 trucks and a handful of trailers, okay? And everybody's here seems to be concerned about the amount of daily traffic these trucks are gonna generate on Brookville roads. Can you tell me, what's the maximum number of trips up and down Brookville Road we're really talking about here?
Well, if you talk about the summer months, not all 5 vehicles will go out. Typically, it's 3 to 4 vehicles in a day that will go out. During the winter, and that's like Monday through Saturday, and it could even be on a Sunday. I mean, we work outside, so if it rains for a day or two, let's say Monday, Tuesday, well, that backs me up to Saturday and Sunday, So, you're talking, when we're really busy, 5, 6, 7 days a week, when we're slowing down 5 days a week, and during the winter months from early December into April, it's only when the snow flies, so they sit, unless it was a winter like last year, for the most part during the winter months, they sit.
Okay, but so, through the summer, when you're not plowing snow, the trucks leave once in the morning and come back once at night, or are they back and forth all day long?
No, they leave in the morning, and they're gone until the evening.
Okay.
Now,
So
Tony, our general manager, if I need a part, may come back and pick something up, but as a rule, we leave in the morning and we're gone during the day to perform our duties out in the field. We really don't have any kind of work we do there.
Okay, so an average of 8 passages a day of a truck with a trailer attached to it.
For the summer season,
Once out,
yes.
once back, average of 3 to 5, 4 vehicle, I'm not trying to come up with a limit, I'm just trying to understand the scale of this traffic that we're concerned about.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
during, that might be during the summer months. During the winter months, we roughly go out and pay 36 visits to a property on average during a winter month, so December, January, February, March, over the course of 4 months. So you could roughly say 40 days inside those 4 months we're doing some sort of snow removal. Unless we dealt with something like last year, which was daily.
Okay. All right, so I mean, I'm just trying to get a sense of how busy you've made Brookville Road or Weed Road, and I don't know, what route do you guys normally take in and out of the property?
If they just got a pickup truck, you know, I told them you can go down Brookville, we tried to go down Weed Road. And I'm on them about doing 30 to 40 miles an hour, and Tony says, you know, Ray, I got them at 30 miles an hour, I want them going slow. It beats up our equipment too much that sits inside that trailer, just, it'll rattle it to death. So, they go slow, for the most part, they use Weed Road, am I correct?
Correct. And I'm conscious of the people that are walking, I've got kids myself, I understand though, I mean, the traffic you see down Brookville, I've seen people going down there 55 mile an hour and they are cooking, that's way too darn fast with all the hills. We do not travel that fast.
No, when you've got a trailer with equipment in it and stuff for the most part, right? Okay. And then help me understand, how extraordinary these trucks are. From the looks of things, all but one of your trucks are the same as a pickup truck that a person drives every day,
Yeah.
right?
They have 550s and 350s are all the same. They're basically a pickup style truck with a flatbed.
1 ton.
They're 1 tons. And then we got our 2 650s.
So how many like trucks do you have that are bigger than 350?
No,
Could I have evidence to center
got,
this?
No, I'm asking him. No, it's not your turn.
we have got 2 650s,
2 650.
1 550, 1 350, and 1 250. All the trucks are white.
Well, anything over 350 is really considered a medium duty truck.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they're not like a semi.
No, they're not tandem, they're single axle trucks. One axle, they're not dual axles, and we don't have pups behind them. We don't have gravel train trailers behind them. And the trucks, when we do use them, it's generally for branches or leaves or mulch. We don't deal in hardscapes and heavy materials. And we don't travel down the roads with them. When we need materials and those trucks are loaded up, it goes from the supplier to the job site. Same with our salt. We go to the supplier and we take it to the job site.
Yeah, okay, so your truck, the sense I get is your trucks are no bigger than the art van delivery truck.
Right. And probably in cases.
Well, no, but it's like, is it a big truck that's gonna, it's not like a Kalo truck,
No.
right? And those are the trucks I followed down Brookville and Salem Road that aren't supposed to be there.
No.
But they're also the ones that are entitled to be there because they're going to their terminal, which is the loophole in the law.
Right.
Because that's the way home at night.
No, they're not like those. They're not like your Internationals or your Kenworths. They're nothing remotely like that.
So. I think I understand what's there. You know, I guess I'd ask you a question, and that is, having heard all of the neighborhood concerns, do you feel that you've proposed restrictions on your activities here with this conditional use permit that you think should be acceptable to them?
If you're asking, are you in a sense asking me, have you heard what the complaints were and are you addressing them? Is that in a sense what you're asking me? Yeah, through the township, if they bring a complaint to me about something, it gets addressed. And the township knows I react to it. When it's brought to me, I react immediately. I don't argue and fight with any of them down here. They bring something to my attention and we jump on it. And I think the people down here at the township would back me on that. And I have had asked people to come on out and see that I have taken care of this. So yeah, if there is a concern, they bring it to me, it gets jumped on immediately, and I follow up on it with somebody here and explain to them what actions are taken and prove that we have.
It's someone else's turn here.
As I said earlier, I didn't really have any questions, but I had a lot of thoughts.
It's a lot.
I did visit the property along with Mr. Shepherd. We requested a meeting. We contacted Mr. Leideman. Sorry.
That's fine.
Okay. We did meet with him. We met his mother, who lives in the house. When I was on the property, I took lots of pictures myself. None of my pictures look anything like those pictures. Going back to Article 63, if you continue that first section, 63.01, read the end of the last paragraph. It says, no conditional use shall commence until a conditional use permit is issued in accordance with this article. Listening to all the feedback from the residents in that area and reading this statement, I'm really concerned. You know, that really bothers me. None of what I'm hearing matches anything that I saw when I was there. Mr. Leideman was more than accommodating, was very happy to have me there, was more than willing to answer any and all of my questions. However concerned I may be about what has happened in the past, my job is to review what's being put in front of me right now. We are not a zoning enforcement entity. We're a planning commission. And our job is to look at this application, taking that into consideration and hearing all of the feedback. In my mind, it presents a unique opportunity to impose a lot of limitations, taking into consideration everyone's concerns. And I think those limitations would be really important in the spirit of being neighborly. Going back to that last sentence, if this conditional use permit were approved, no conditional use shall commence until a conditional use permit is issued in accordance with this article. So, does that mean that business will cease and desist until that pole barn is built?
That is an excellent question, and it brings up, I need to talk about transition. How do we get from, let's work under the assumption that this action is approved, that this plan is approved. The question is, how do we get from where we are to this? The ordinance sets a limit on how long a period of time a minor site plan is valid without construction, and that's, I don't recall, it's a year or a year and a half, I don't recall which right offhand. But you as a planning commission have authority under the ordinance to set a timeline, and so this may be an additional item that would be on the list of conditions, is to simply set a deadline by which the improvements shown on the plan will be completed. And that's something maybe to ask the applicant about. The applicant may already have a plan in mind for how to get this done and what kind of timing it would take. This is an existing land use. It is a land use that under our current ordinance is allowable with conditional use permit, but it does predate our current ordinance. So it would be allowed to be continued during this transition period, and based on the standards that you would set. So, for example, setting a condition to say by a certain date, all improvements on the plan will be in place. Well, at that point, then everything would be followed here. You could also have a condition that said, in the interim, all the rules except for the building would be enforced. So. Once this, so for example, the hours of operation, the other items that can be done right now would be done. The applicant, until the pole barn is built, the applicant couldn't move activity from the front of the property to the rear, but he certainly could follow the hours of operation, for example, even right now. So I think there does need to be some language in any approval action that would address that transition.
Yes, Mr. Ritter.
You mentioned the non-conforming that was okay prior to any change in the, the conditional use provisions and that. Once the conditional use provisions are in place, then all those other things that were approved that are not included in the conditional use permit then are not allowable anymore, is that correct?
Right. Once the conditional use permit is approved, this is the Bible for the property, what you have in your application. The main caveat I would say to that is that we do need to set a transition period so you can get from where he is to this, because there's the need to construct the building and the driveway and such.
Should our approval be postponed until everything's in place? I mean, how do we know then if we approve it that?
Well, that's a chicken and egg issue. He needs to have an approved plan and approved conditional use permit in order to be able to do the things that are on the plan. So
you're saying we need a timeline then?
right, they do.
You can't leave it open-ended.
Right. My suggestion is ask the applicant what his plans are in terms of that. I suspect he probably has already looked at those details. We're at the end of the construction season, so whatever happens may, in all likelihood, will have to go into the 2015 construction season. But setting a reasonable limit based on what the applicant says is possible for getting this done, it would be reasonable to include in this in any approval action.
Mr. Ladman, have you got a plan and a time frame?
Yeah, we're looking at by the 1st of July next year. I don't need a year and a half or a year to do it. We looked into getting it done now, but time is not of the essence. And these pole barns typically don't do good when you set them in the fall. I've been told, I don't know the facts on it, but in talking to some people about putting a pole barn up, they said, you couldn't have picked a worse time of year to set poles and what have you. They said, you're looking at spring. Some of this stuff has to be custom ordered because it's not in buying pole barns, you can buy packages, a 40 by 60, a 20 by 30, and they're pre-fabbed. And some of them are even stocked. Well, with this particular size, we have to have custom trusses made, so we have to have blueprints made, they have to be sent to a truss company, and they'd have to be built to conform to what we're gonna do with this barn. So there's a little bit of time that goes into that. Just doing that portion of it couldn't be handled in a month, so we go through the winter months. The only thing I can do is plan and prep for it, and then the first chance that we can get an excavator out there and get working on putting a barn up is what we would do, and the sooner the better. I would have hoped if this had gone, we'd got to the planning commission earlier in the year, we could have had one put up by this fall.
It seems to me, though, you could do all the pre-planning and the contracting ahead of time,
Right.
and then, as soon as the weather breaks, it won't take long to construct that pole barn once you have everything in place.
No, it's just timing of individuals, like the excavator I have. I talked to him the other day about it, I said, can you give me an idea? He goes, Ray, I'm backed up already into 2015 because I haven't completed the work I have this year due to the rainy season. So he's already backed up into going into the spring of 2015. So there's people I have to talk to, and I'd have to give them restrictions and say, look, we got a deadline, we need to be done by July 1st, it needs to be done. And get started on first thing in the spring. And we got frost laws that come into play too, and I don't know what weather's gonna be like this spring, or, you know, how it's gonna restrict gravel to be traveled down the roads. These roads, we just can't, when we feel like it, haul materials down them. The Department of Transportation, they dictate. This year, getting the trucks across the road was much later than normal, but we had frost that was real deep in the ground. Earlier that spring comes, the earlier I can complete the project to be done with it. But I do have to, I would hope by July 1st it'd be done.
I can attest to the fact that it takes a while right now. I'm also in the process of having a pole barn built, and I'm like number 30 on the list, you know, so mine is also not gonna happen until probably spring. However, there are many other concerns that the residents of the community has. So, talk about the hours of business, for example. What are some other things that you could do in the meantime that could bring peace to the community?
Well, we can follow the hours. Once I move the equipment that we have, where we plan on having cars parking, where we plan on having them to park in the future, we could put that equipment, once we get it on our trucks and transition in the winter, and open that up for employee parking, so they're not parking at the bottom down there where we are parking currently. If they want to sharpen more blades, they can go in the garage, my mom's home, and they can close the garage door and keep it in the confines of the garage so that it's not outside. And then just work within the hours that we have here.
All right, I've got another question, maybe for Mr. Nanny. And that is, what's the difference between the way they describe their operation and a facility that's used basically as a truck terminal? Which is you know, a terminal where trucks come and go, and, you know, you park them on site. I mean, conceptually, it seems like the only element of the landscaping business that's taking place on this property is the storage of the trucks and equipment.
The truck terminals, typically the trucks and trailers are parked outside. The outdoor storage is a major component. In fact, it's really the primary component of a truck terminal facility. You usually have a building, but outdoor storage usually dominates a truck terminal site. This is proposed to not have any outdoor storage or parking of vehicles once this pole barn is constructed, other than the 4 employee parking spaces. So I think it is significantly different in character from a truck terminal.
Because they're proposing to have all the equipment and trucks inside.
Right, yeah. Truck terminals, you have rows of trailers, you have rows of of tractor units, all parked, typically parked outside. Those typically are not parked indoors unless they're being worked on at a truck terminal facility.
Okay, now one of these kind of out of the box questions, and that is for Mr. Loudon, what would you do if next Monday you could no longer have your trucks outside on that property? Where would
Come
you
next
put 'em?
Monday, I have to get working pretty fast to find out what I'm gonna do with them.
You find some other place to park them.
I'd have to do something, yes.
Yeah. What? Had you given any thought to that?
Yeah, I've given thought to that. Yes, I have.
Okay. No answer. Just anywhere else?
Did you, oh, as to where I would go with it, is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, sure. Well,
I've given thought to the fact that we may have to move, and if so, where would we move to? There is one option, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's written in stone, it's something I can do or cannot do. It's not something that we know for sure as to whether we can or can't. And it's not due to an ordinance or anything like that, it's due to an individual in space. But if you're asking me if I gave thought to what would I have to do, yes, I have.
Okay, so then maybe it's occurred to me, maybe I should ask the question the following way. What if we said, and I can't speak for anybody else here other than myself, but what if we said, okay, here's the conditional use permit, but the transition period is 0 days. So you have to stop that current activity until you're prepared to operate it in the new conditions. Would you come back after that?
Well, more than likely, yeah, my mom wants me back there. She likes having me take care of her property. It's a big property to maintain. We spend quite a bit of time there taking care of it. And she's got the company of the guys there. She enjoys that. So yeah, she as much wants me there and my guys there, and I wanna be there. She's a single old woman that.
Draconian
Yeah.
suggestion, you know, I'm not saying
Yeah.
that that's the answer to it or anything like that.
Right.
But it's not just a matter of convenience, you really would like to do this use on this property.
Well, right, I mean, I grew up there. I'm 49. My mom and dad, they raised us there as well.
It's cheap. It's cheap there. Ask him what how much he pays
It's
for it.
okay, I'm not asking, you know.
Okay.
Plan commissioner discussion here. Is all. Okay. I'm starting to run out of ideas of things to ask, I don't know. Really, good.
Mr. Lanneman? I
Yes.
just have two more
Sure.
little detailed questions. So, I heard about the truck idling, and I know in the construction world, the trucks, you know, they come in and, especially if they're loud and whatnot. Would that be something that you could address, and I know I married a construction man, trucks are always on, drives me bananas, shut off, you're wasting gas, whatever, but they are loud when you're not used to it. The construction guys tend to leave them on all the time, is that something that could be addressed
Yeah,
with your business, so they're just not running?
right. Just
We
pull
could-
them in, when we get there, pull them in, back them in your garage, turn them off. If we're gonna leave them run in the garage. And we have, like, we may start.
Right, I understand they do have to run a
Right,
little bit.
on these diesels, you just don't start them up like a car, boom, take off. off the
Right, I
driveway.
understand that, that's why I was asking if it's
Right.
something that you could work with,
Right, yeah,
but be conscious of the neighbors as well.
right.
And then I have another question for Rodney. In regards to the grinding noise, he mentioned about the hours of operation, sometimes 7 o'clock can still be a little early. Would it be possible to request, like they have like the more of the soundproof insulation? I know it's a big barn, but is that something that would help, or is that kind of silly, or?
Well, it's, no, it's certainly not silly in any way.
Because the barn's gonna be back, but now you're pushing into the other, closer to the other neighbor's property.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, we're really getting beyond the scope of what we can do in the zoning ordinance, because that's really a building code issue.
It's not a noise ordinance,
No, it does, we don't, the township does not have that type of detail in the noise ordinance.
okay.
That would, and does not require that kind of treatment to existing buildings. I think, as it was mentioned earlier, as we talked about, this is a pole barn that could be built by anybody, just simply for their own purposes on this property, and inside it, they could have a substantial amount of machinery, woodworking, metalworking shops, other things that would create, similar types of noise that would require no approval whatsoever from the township, and would have no restriction on in terms of noise either inside or outside of the building. I do understand the concern, and I think the hours of operation, obviously it moved that somebody, it was mentioned that this noise was happening at 6 a.m. This, it would not be allowed as this is proposed. But to put a condition that addresses something that's basically a state construction code issue, I think would be beyond what we can do within the scope of the zoning ordinance.
Sure, I just wanted to ask because I liked Casey's comments in regards to keeping the peace with the neighbors that you grew up with. So, just see, what's possible, or what would you be willing to do, because that kind of seemed to be an issue with them. Thank you.
Yeah, we have the other second, the garage where my mom has her car, and that's pretty well soundproof, and if we needed to sharpen blades, you can either do it there or off-site. Our trucks come equipped with power, similar to what you have in your home. You plug an extension cord in the wall, we can do the same thing in our trucks and operate our grinders.
Yeah, I keep coming up with ideas, right? But, no, we haven't talked a lot about Article 61, which is parking requirements, okay? And so I was reading Article 61 some time ago, and it has sections under general regulations that are related to use and alteration of parking loading facilities, not much, unlicensed or inoperable vehicles, parking or storage, location of required parking, which seems to be in line with what's here. Then it has residential district parking requirements and then rural district parking requirements, and they're quite different. And I was surprised myself to see the difference, right? Because in residential districts, parking of motor vehicles accessory to single-family or two-family dwellings shall be limited to passenger vehicles and a maximum of one commercial vehicle per dwelling unit of a light delivery type not exceeding 10,000 pounds GVW. And that's in a residential district. And we're not talking about a residential district here, we're talking about a rural district, because it's agricultural residential. And that's not there. And so, the zoning ordinance anticipates a difference in what the allowable vehicles are, parked accessory to a dwelling or whatever. And, I can't say exactly what the line of thinking is, but I can understand that they're different. Right? So if you were in a state residential, which is a residential district with a 5-acre lot minimum, couldn't park a 10,000, 12,000 pound GVW pickup truck outside. But if you're agricultural residential, you can do that, there's no problem. Because there's no real restriction other other than other elements of the zoning ordinance which would restrict business-type activities and such, correct?
That is correct. In fact, the agricultural district, as mentioned, that this is a residential area, certainly there are residents, rural residences in this area. The agricultural residential district is intended to be in some ways, it has business elements to it. I mean, it is a rural district. It's intended to have the rural character that the township is very happy with and proud to have. But it does allow for some more intensive activities in it. I mean, on the first page of our report, just kind of to continue your discussion of the difference related to parking, there are activities that are allowed in the agricultural residential district that would not be allowed in any of the other residential districts, whether here in the hamlet or in the estate residential. Some of those business activities include agricultural service establishments, bulk feed and farm supply, farm implement sales and repair, farm markets, kennels, veterinary clinics, bed and breakfast inns, as well as the one that I just cringe every time I say it, but the state legislature requires it of us, volatile biofuel production facilities. That is required by the state of Michigan that we allow it in the agricultural residential district. And so it is a district that allows some business activity of various types. And it is different than the residential districts of the township.
Thank you. So where are we here tonight?
I think your proposal varies vastly different than the past practices. You know, I think we've established that tonight. The proposal is not a bad proposal. It's well thought out, well put together. I think you had some help with that. If that's what we're going to be voting on as a proposal, we can't entertain past practices. We have to go by what's being proposed. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And that proposal would be a substantial improvement as to what's been going on the property in the past.
Yes, it would certainly be a major upgrade. If I may add just one quick comment. You mentioned about having help, and I think it's worth mentioning. We did meet with both applicants that are here tonight. We have regularly scheduled times that we're available as a consultant to sit down with applicants to go over proposals. If a real estate broker, whoever is coming in has a question, they can come in. They can establish an appointment time and come in. Residents, whoever has a question can do that. Of course, Donna, as a zoning administrator, keeps regular hours as well. But we work with folks to answer questions about the ordinance, no matter who they are or what their question may be, whether they're a resident of the township or somebody coming in from outside. The township has a fee for some of those meetings, depending on what's being dealt with. But that is a service essentially the township has provided to all applicants, and that are needing for some reason to come before them.
That was going to be my next question. You answered it. So, was there a fee involved in this?
I don't know because I don't collect the fee. But we do talk with, as I said, we do all that by appointment through the township, through the zone administrator. Those appointments are set.
But in saying this, what I'm saying is it's a well put together proposal, I feel. You know, I think it addresses a lot of the issues if there's adherence to this proposal.
Have you given any thought to how you're gonna handle your winter hours of operation with snow being unpredictable and you having, you know, if it was granted to you, you would be having a large number of oversight eyes, making sure you maintained your hours of operation. So what with snow trucks, how would you manage
Hours of operation, 8 AM to 7 PM.
8 AM is when we would bring truck equipment in or take it out. Same as the end hours for the evening.
So you don't do the middle of the night plowing
Sure we do.
parking lots?
Absolutely, we do that.
Okay,
That daytime hours would be transitioned for us to move equipment out of there and park them at sites to be used at night. Instead of coming and picking it up at night, we would just move it out during daytime hours, so that we wouldn't be there at night bothering anybody.
and Rodney, I had a question for you. Could you just explain, if you know, what recourse do people have if things like hours of operation, noise levels are not followed?
Well, actually, I think I'm gonna let Donna explain that, so she deals with that on a daily basis.
Unfortunately, yeah, all it requires is a call. Someone needs to call or come in and fill out a complaint form. Then it goes to the, I converse with the township supervisor, and we decide on the course of action. The first thing that's done is automatically a letter goes out explaining what the complaint was, what the hours of operation are, and I want to be contacted, or I want that issue mitigated within a reasonable amount of time. And then we do follow up if that time frame hasn't been met. We do have the ability to take it to court, call. You know, if that, it depends on how far the township is willing to carry that complaint.
Yes.
I have a question for you. All the things we talked about and all the questions that we asked the applicant, and, well, what about this and that, and he was trying to be, be very accommodating, saying, yes, we could do this, or we could sharpen off site, whenever possible, or how we explain the winter hours. Do we have all the answers for that? Are we going to are we gonna ask him to put this in the plan before we take a vote? Because a lot of information has gone back and forth.
I can address that if you'd like.
Great.
You go right ahead and answer, because it'll be the same one I'd have.
Yeah, well, I just, as we were talking, as I mentioned, in our report, we suggested two conditions, really, one's a finding and one's a condition related to this application. You, as a planning commission, can impose whatever additional conditions you feel are necessary to ensure compliance with the zoning ordinance. The ones that I just noted, these are all related to this transition period. I wrote down three, and the first number, the two that are there, so number 3 is all improvements to be completed by July 1st, 2015. Number 4, as I noted, it was hours of operation to begin immediately. And number 5 was specifically about blade sharpening. It was blade sharpening to take place within the residential garage until the pole barn is constructed. And obviously, you can set those any way you choose, but those were just my notes as we were talking.
Okay.
And those would essentially, they would become part of the approval. So they would be on the record. Donna would note them on the plans, so they would be part of the plans themselves going forward.
I heard you say that in the beginning, we can implement that, but so much has taken place. I was wondering if somebody other than myself, through 7 pages of notes, was keeping track too.
We have it down too. Thank you. Be part of the motion.
Now, Mr. Chair, does the public not have any right to comment on the feedback he gave you and the accuracy of what was just provided to you that you're planning to take a vote on? Do we not have any feedback to that?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
He answered your questions, but they're just listening to them. The public here, I'm sure, has a lot of feedback as to what was said, and you would be willing to vote before you hear back?
Well, I'll try and be direct. The process, I understand it, is the planning commission here is the group, the public body that decides what the answer is. And we consider input from the public, we consider input from the applicant, and from the professionals, and we use our own judgment and the zoning ordinance and all that to try and get through this thing. And if we don't feel comfortable with making a decision, we won't make a decision, okay? We may, I don't know where we're headed just yet. I was kind of looking around here, and we'll see what happens, okay? But it's our job to do it, and we're gonna do it the best way we can, and it's not a popular vote as to how we decide this. It's the questions and concerns you have brought up before us related to managing the compatibility of this use in the district with the adjacent uses. That is our charge here, to try and understand that and then do what we believe is right. Okay? So, I still have another question. I think you're okay, because you know what I'm doing, but my question would be, what limits the number of vehicles that are involved in the landscape of business activity? The way the proposal is spelled out right now. The size of the barn?
Oh, we're talking about what limits in the future? Yeah, certainly the size of the barn, we do not have a limit on the number of trucks. You could establish one. The challenge, of course, is equipment varies, so we did not feel comfortable suggesting a specific limitation on the number of vehicles or the number of pieces of equipment. It seemed to me like the size of the building itself set a limit on what's possible, since all the vehicles would be parked inside that building during the off-business hours, unless they're...
Oh, I understand. Oh, and so I think that's the limit, and I'm thinking of what we stated as the amount of truck traffic on Brookville Road, and I want to somehow manage this in a way where we put an effective limit, direct or indirect, on the number of trips that's going to be, and I see the best way to do that is to limit the number of vehicles involved in the landscape business activities, is what I see. And how many do you have now? 5?
Yes.
6?
There's five on location.
5 on the road plus the grader or whatever,
You mean the front end loader?
then the unloader.
Yeah, the end loader.
But there's 5 plated vehicles?
There's 5 plated vehicles.
And so, I mean, I don't know where you guys are, but I would like to limit it to the existing quantity of...
He said he doesn't plan on growing the business.
Pardon?
He said he doesn't plan on growing the business.
Oh, I understand.
So I think it would be appropriate to put a limit on the number of vehicles.
That's what I'm thinking.
In lieu of traveling, give some kind of a leadway on it, but, there should be, because otherwise, if you just grow the vehicles.
I have a real problem with dictating to a business what their inventory has to be. You know, I mean, that's talking about someone's business plan. All we have the power to say is, hey, he has said he's not gonna grow the business, so.
Oh, I understand. And I'm there thinking it's a local road, not a regional road, it's not a main road. So what makes the business acceptable on a local road is the size and scope of the activity. So I wouldn't have this question if they were located on North Territorial Road.
Right.
Okay? So I'm sensitive, let's say, to the school bus use on Brookville Road, right? And the only good thing I note about that is it always stops at the houses wherever the people are. So it's not like people are walking down the road to get to the bus. But it's still, yes.
I guess one thing I would say is that with this is I'm a little leery of putting numbers on it, just because it's very easy to, when you're going out and counting, these are vehicles that are coming and going all the time. It would be very difficult for as a township to even enforce that number. But we have the building size, 60 by 80, and the configuration of the building, with the doors the way they're set, with the driveway the way it's set, sets a pretty practical limit, because all the equipment that will be on the site has to be inside those buildings during those off-business hours, inside the building during off-business hours. And so I think from a practical perspective, we already have that limitation, without the need to try to set a restriction on vehicle.
Okay, but I could park almost 20 snowplow trucks in there.
Yeah.
It's that big.
We actually, made a variation on allowing it to be on it's not a main road, is what I'm trying to say. So there is been some give on that part of it. In the proposal, if we approve it, we're saying part of the ordinance talks about not on that kind of a road if you're gonna have the business. Talks on a main road, like you said, so I'm thinking you've already made a concession on the road, so you have to have some insurances then that isn't gonna be abused by a whole lot of trucks going down that road.
Well, we haven't made a concession on the road yet.
I mean,
But
I
if we were
said,
gonna
according to the
propose one,
proposal.
Yeah,
See, my concern is this, though, is that we get the situation where if the applicant decides to buy a Volkswagen Beetle and paint it in the livery colors of the business, that could put him over the limit. If he decides that, his own personal pickup truck should have the business sign on the side because he wants to advertise it. It's his own personal pickup truck owned by him, but he's painted it in the business colors. It could be counted as an extra business vehicle. We get in a situation where we're really outside of the practical scope of enforcement. Whereas the building size itself, it kind of sets that. We also, the other element that sets this is the number of employee parking spaces. There are 4 allowed. The reason that there are 4 outside is because the ordinance says 5 or more spaces. A parking lot of 5 or more spaces is subject to another additional set of rules. Okay, handicap parking and paving and other things come into play, and so from a practical standpoint, there is very limited employee parking here. Any other employee vehicles have to be inside the barn during business hours, and so just from a practical standpoint of maneuvering on the site and in the narrow space that he's proposed to work in, he does not have room to park multiple vehicles in there much beyond what he's proposed to do.
Yep.
I still think, I agree with Doug. Pole barn can contain quite a few vehicles, a pole barn of that size. Plus you've got the 4 parking spots, What's to stop it from growing to twice its size? It's gonna exacerbate then the travel on the road.
If you're looking at putting a restriction on, my suggestion would be to put it on for the larger vehicles, medium-duty trucks. So we were talking the 450, 550, 650, those vehicles, rather than restricting normal passenger cars and trucks, because I think we will get into problems with enforcement. But if you, for example, set a limit on the number of medium-duty trucks that could be on the site, that's probably something that could be dealt with simply by Donna sending a note, how many vehicles you have, and verify that count of the medium-duty truck size.
Doug, and Dan, I see what you're saying about the barn being big and we can go to X amount of vehicles. The barn was designed to where we hook a truck up to a trailer so that we can back the truck and trailer together into the barn. And we have 3 slots for that. Then we have another area for the tractors to go into, and then any equipment. So everything we have that pertains to trucks, trailers, tractors, salter bodies, all that's going under the roof. We built that to house that equipment. So if you get to vehicles and say, well, Ray, maybe you want to buy 5 more vehicles. Well, if I bought 5 more vehicles, I'd have nowhere to put them because I would still need the equipment that I have to operate today at today's level, and then a whole bunch more, so I need another barn actually to do that. So the barn size, when you look at it, we're not just putting trucks in there, we're putting trucks with trailers hooked to them. So we took in consideration the depth. The length of the truck with the length of the trailer, we could back the whole unit right in. We can't do without trailers, that's what we put our lawnmowers on, and that's what we trailer our tractor with. So the barn has been designed to house that. We, you know, if we got another truck, chances are we'd need another trailer to pull equipment with it. So, you know, I know what you're thinking, that, well, if he doesn't have, he's got this big space, we can pile a bunch of vehicles in it. Well, that's not what our intent is. We need those trailers, and all the equipment has to go in when it's not being used. So every piece I got has gotta go under that roof. And that's why we have that barn built to the size it was, so there is no room for expansion on that. There's no room to even add another vehicle in there by the time, we put everything in there.
I'm not disputing what you're saying, I'm just thinking, your business model could change in the future. You could decide I don't need to cut lawns, all I need to do is plow in the winter. And you could say, I got a really good business going here, and you could have 20 plow trucks in there. Okay, and so, I know that's not your intention, and so what I'm trying to do is find a way to box you in so that the thing that you don't intend to do isn't possible.
Okay.
He increases the size of his employee parking lot, he'd have to come back.
Yeah, well, that's the building growth, but what I'm saying is, you can change the way the business operates, and it could,
But he can only have parking for 4 employees on site. So if he wants to increase the employee parking, he'll have to come back to you, and that would be a new business.
no, because what he's doing is he's swapping them in and out.
The employees are coming in,
And
but
they
he doesn't have room for his equipment.
Is there a limit to the number of employees in the business? No, but he said he could park in Forty-five foot long rig out right now. Right, and you put 3 cars in there. But, well, no, but if you put 20 trucks in there, 20 trucks out, driving down a driveway, 50 cars in before left. That's my point. They can all be a fair spot. And then, where I'm at is, it's a local road, and I understand the difference between, let's call it, trucks that are the same as what we drive every day, and then, medium-duty trucks, right?
I guess one thing I would suggest is that with a conditional use permit, you're approving a land use, and the land use is described in the plans and applications that have been put in front of you. And that is a year-round business operation. It has a certain character to it. It has a certain intensity to it that's described in the plan, and the applicant has talked about that. It is a character and intensity that is different than it has been historically. That the applicant has responded to concerns and questions, and it also has responded to our zoning ordinance, which has restrictions on it. What you're describing is a change in that land use, rather than a year-round business operation that it sounds like, quite frankly, is lower in intensity in the winter. What you're describing is a seasonal business operation that would have a high intensity in the winter and low or no intensity in the summer. That would require coming back to you for an amended conditional use permit. So he already would be subject, if that were to take place, he would already be subject to coming back to you. I don't think there's a need to go that level out into the future, simply because it's already addressed in the ordinance.
So in your judgment, the constraints that are here are adequate to address that?
I do believe so. This has a significant set of restrictions on it. That are detailed and enforceable. They're all items that the zoning administrator can address as issues arise in the future.
And I have to accept the professional opinion on that.
No.
I'm saying it because I recognize you know more about this and the nuance of regulations and implementation and such than I do. And so you understood my concern and you've explained how what's there would cause that to have to go for review if that, something like that were to happen. And I'm comfortable knowing, as long as it's reviewed appropriately, that you can manage any change. So I'm not concerned about that. It's just a question of too much license now, that could potentially be more than we hope for, and you're saying, no, it can't go that way without needing a review. Okay.
So are we ready for a motion yet?
Pardon me?
Are we ready for a motion yet?
I think we're ready at any time for somebody to make a motion.
Okay, I'll do it then.
Don't forget you have to add the three.
I'm gonna have them add it.
And grinding, you know, he said could be done off-site when possible, you know, instead of in the garage. That's the noise was a big deal.
Right, but I think what we wrote down.
We can make a motion and we can have a little bit of discussion if we don't get the motion just right the first time. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
So I make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit with conditions on that. One being that the hours of operation be effective immediately. The second being, sorry, let me get back on here. Second being that access to Burkeville Road is acceptable based on the standards of section 40 point, that you wrote down, I know. Number 2, expansion of business activities beyond those areas identified on the approved site plan for use by the landscape business shall be subject to planning commission approval of an amended conditional use permit. Next, the noise issues be addressed with the grinding. The grinding of the equipment needs to be done in the garage and during business hours.
Could you put the fire
And
department
that
on alert in case there's a fire?
And that the pole barn be constructed by July 1st.
I would add an extension with the ability to grant an extension of 3 months. We don't know how construction's gonna go, so he would have an, if he can't meet the July 1st, he will come back, write a letter to the board requesting a 3-month extension on that permit. Just to cover extension.
Is there a second for that motion from someone?
I second it.
All right.
Residents wait 2 years.
Is there some discussion? I'd like to make one point, and that is I think we need to, and maybe I didn't hear clearly, but I think we might need to add a finding or two to the beginning, perhaps, where we find that the land use and proposed improvements are in accordance with ordinance provisions for a landscaping business in a rural district, and that the access to Brookville Road is acceptable based on the limitations in the proposal.
You said that already?
Yeah, then she already mentioned it.
Pardon?
She already mentioned about the access to Brookville Road.
So it'd be, and so I would, my motion is to amend your motion by adding those in the, what's called the preamble. The Plan Commission finds that, this, and then okay, so that's my motion to amend the motion. Is there a second to that?
No, we'll add another one. Can the parking be moved from the old location to the new location?
During the transition period.
During the transition
I'd need about a month to get transition of equipment and move it to be out there, get the fall stuff out and put the their salters and the tractor there. And I can remove them and have them start to park there.
So
A 1 month,
during the period of transition, you're going to have the sharpening in the homeowner's garage, sharpening during business hours, and you're going to move the employee parking to the location and immediately start the hours of operation.
Right.
I'd almost suggest avoiding the parking issue. Just because, as a transition issue, because we're really talking about trying to play musical chairs here, again, with the details of the business operation. Maybe a condition simply says that the employee parking will be moved to the new location prior, you want to give them more than a month, I guess, is my suggestion. We have a.
So the only thing during the transition period is going to be sharpening in the garage, in the homeowner's garage during this transition until the pole barn is ready. We don't want the sharpening to continue on in the homeowner's garage.
I mean, for example, if it takes 32 days for him to move on his equipment, all of a sudden he's in violation of one of those standards. It's almost an aspirational statement to say, move the employee parking as soon as possible to his new location. He can do that without even having the standard in place. He can make that move as soon as it's.
But the only thing, the hours of operation will start immediately.
What about the trucks running outside of hours?
Helps within business hours of operation.
Only business hours?
All right, so where are we? We're amending the motion.
My planning concern about the blade sharpening and saying that doing it in the garage because, I mean, looking at the video, it was being done in the garage.
No, it was
outside.
outside.
Oh, it was outside the garage.
It was outside.
I just don't know how much being in a garage with an open door is gonna help mitigate noise.
Well, I think
At 7 a.m.
Mr. Lakeman said he would close the door. I believe that the comment was that the door would be closed, so you can make that part of your door.
You got fuel.
Yeah, you could make that part of your requirement, that the garage not only be inside the garage, but that the door be closed. And I think that was the comment from the applicant, that the door would be closed.
Is there any safety issue with grinding in the garage? Solid as anything?
No, as long as that won't get you a question.
All right.
Planning Commission approves conditional use permit 14004 in accordance with the consultant's letter dated October 3rd, 2014, with the finding that Brookville Road is appropriate, the local road is appropriate. I'll clean the language up a little bit. With the following conditions.
And you have a second finding as well.
And the second finding
Acceptable according to the application.
is in accordance with the zoning ordinance requirements for landscaping business and conditional use. With the addition, with the following conditions, that the sharpening of blades will occur in a closed door garage of the homeowner during business hours until the pole barn is constructed. That the Planning Commission would like the improvements done by July 1st of 2015 with the ability to grant and allow themselves the ability to grant a 3-month extension if needed. And that was it, wasn't it?
Hours of.
And the hours of operation will start immediately.
Yes.
Okay, as much as the noise is an issue, just having, the grinding and exhaust and all that stuff in a closed garage, and now we just stated, you have to do this in a closed garage.
Yeah.
Is that the best answer?
No, it's not, that's not what we're gonna do. We will just do the sharpening of blades off-site.
Okay.
I can do that off-site. We'll plug that right into the truck and do it right off-site.
It doesn't change your condition, is establishes a limit, and then they can decide if they wanna do it elsewhere. But
I just think it sounds crazy to tell somebody in writing that they have to put that
So
in a
you want
closed
that
garage.
condition completely
Particularly when
done?
your mom's in the house.
Yeah. So, but now, that's not gonna restrict me from once the pole barn's built.
No,
Okay,
Pole
just
barn you
for the
can-
time being.
Right.
Okay.
just until the pole barn is built, sharpening will occur off-site. Blade sharpening will occur off-site.
And then where will it occur?
In the pole barn.
In the pole barn.
In the pool barn, okay. What else might be
All right,
going on in that barn?
where are we now
Is it really a
with
problem?
the motion that we have?
we haven't had a second yet.
Is it a problem to keep it off-site?
Casey, Kelly made the
No, I
motion.
don't have a problem with it offsite, I wanted us to choose and kind of consolidate what we're saying here.
Because so far from all of this, you know, the noise, the traffic, in a nutshell is that, I mean, those are the biggies, I mean, that's not all of it, but those are the biggies. So is it a problem to keep it off-site?
The sharpening?
Yeah,
No.
then they don't have to hear it at all.
Right.
If the golf course isn't here, they are. Yeah, we just,
Mr. Lewandowski, will you continue with your second?
I'll second the motion, yes.
Okay, so we have the revised motion that's been seconded, right?
Mhm.
Is there any other questions or concerns up here at the planning commission? All right, so I guess we'll call for a roll call vote on the motion in front of us.
Joe Lewandowski,
Yes.
Daniel Bergari,
I vote yes, based on the problems being addressed by this conditional use.
Casey Kelly,
Yes.
TJ McLaughlin,
Yes.
Pam Merlo, yes, Doug Shepherd,
I am also yes, because I believe we've put fair limitations on the activities that are proposed in due consideration of the adjacent uses. Motion passes.
We'll be talking.
We're not done.
We're not done
We're
yet.
allowed to go to 11.
Yeah, public comment?
Yeah, another business item.
The other one we're gonna approve, let's just get it over.
All right. Let's look for 7A. 7B is conditional use of preliminary site plan review on the vacant property on Salem Road.
All those in favor?
Do you, Doug, do you not close out the first hearing part of it and have public comment again before you?
I'm sorry?
Do you not close out the first half
No.
and have public
No.
comment before you go to the next?
No.
No, he doesn't, okay. Nothing, he said no, that you don't have to.
Okay, we're trying to get through the meeting here. And I've got more agenda items to get to before we get to the things that wind down the meeting, one of which would be public comment. So, here we are. We have site plan, well, we have conditional use of preliminary site plan review for 14005. Where are we with questions?
This is for the conditional use, right?
Look at my sheet. How many sheets? I have a sheet. Okay.
This is for conditional use permit for East of Salem Road on vacant property, 28, between 5 and 6 mile in the general industrial district.
I mean, my question for Mr. Danny is pretty much reiterating what the reporter was proposed here is a less intensive use than is typically allowed in general industrial.
It is, yes, a less intensive use than what exists over on Chubb Road, right, you know, bordering property.
Okay, and when I looked at the site plan, I saw an inventory of trees. And I was trying to understand, when the inventory of the trees up where the proposed workshop and the gravel, lots will be, what's proposed and what's going to become of those trees?
I acknowledge that there are things needed on the site plan, but as stated in the letter, the information was sufficient for the planning commission to review and consider the conditional use permit application. So that's why I specifically would like to take action on that conditional use permission contingent on approval of a final site plan, because I have time restrictions that I'm under. But there are certain things needed, and it takes a long time just to get GLAs in Salem Township here, also just to get that basic information. You know, it's a lot of time and money involved, and as I understand, it's been going on 2 years. I didn't realize that until just now, but it just takes a lot of time. So I realize that would be needed to be shown what would need to be, you know, removed in order to put a building in the location that it was, and the building was set there for different reasons. Again, very low impact and very small footprint for the size property, but the elevation of the property, the site when you pull out of the driveway, things like that, and so.
Yes, Mr. Henry.
I would say that the details that are shown for the trees are an item for final site plan. We do ask for that level of detail in terms of what trees, you know, what's going on in the property, you know, what's there, what's being removed, what do you want to replace. All of those details will come up on a final site plan, similar to what you saw on, for example, the Coptic Church project, where we saw conceptual information and preliminary, and then all the details were set on the final. At this stage for a preliminary site plan, the tree information is actually far more than is required. Typically for a preliminary site plan, we would see kind of bubbles showing here's where existing trees are, you know, here's where they remain, here's where they might be removed.
Okay. All right, so when I look at the site plan, the residence is pretty much in the center of what's a very large property towards the back. It's buffered by its own lot from the adjacent uses, so it doesn't seem as though that is a big concern to me. And I see that the proposed shop and gravel work areas are, geez, the setback is generous and far more than the 40 feet that's required there. So it seems like this scale of a business proposal can fit on this lot and not create issues for the adjacent general industrial and or residential, non-conforming residential uses that are nearby.
Right.
I mean, that's the conclusion I reached, because everything's right in there.
You know, one thing you mentioned cause issues for the general industrial. If you recall, during the development of the zoning ordinance, there was substantial concern from the industrial businesses about the homes that are in this neighborhood. As was mentioned, I think there's a dozen or so homes in the district that were developed lawfully, legally. They were legal when they were put up. They're now legal non-conforming uses of various sorts. And in our ordinance, we were very specific in terms of that the homes that are in the general industrial district are allowed to remain, but they do not create additional burdens for screening or other requirements on the neighboring businesses.
Yes.
This home would be the same. It would not create any new restriction on the neighboring industrial operations in terms of a requirement for screening or setbacks or anything like that, because it's an accessory use to the industrial activity here.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking to my left. Anyone got?
My concern was the trees that, you know, at least the ones that were in that area that's proposed. There's, I counted 8, you know, landmark or historic trees. Of to our zoning regulations, the type they are and the diameter. But you said that would be addressed
That is,
in,
it is a final site plan issue. I will tell you that the ordinance would require, the ordinance allows those trees to be removed where development activity has to take place. It does require replacement. It has replacement ratios built in the ordinance, so he will be required to replace those trees with so many new ones of various types. But all of that is a final site plan item. We'll address that at that stage.
Looking right.
I'm gonna ask the applicant a question, out of curiosity, because I really can't tell, looking at the aerial view, where the house is that a wooded area, or is that brush,
Yeah,
or
actually-
field?
Yeah, what it is, I don't know if you need to make a decision or not, but in the front is the least desirable vegetation. It does have some nice trees, but they're unavoidable to do anything there. And rather than coming in and wiping it all out, you know, someone doing a general industrial, a typical application, I don't know if you can tell with this or not, but you can see, this is a green belt of old spruce trees, which is just gorgeous, and all the really nice stuff is in the back of the property. This is a lot of brushy stuff. All of the trees over in this area, we have not marked, again, just cost factor and just needing to know whether or not we could even use it for here. So, your question just...
So it's mostly wooded?
Yeah, it is mostly wooded, but largely brushy in that area. And we kept everything in front of the pine trees in order to try and maintain as much as we could, but it's unavoidable to take out things there and so it makes sense. You know, I can understand the tough situation that fella faced. The landscape business is conditional in every zoning district. There's no principal zoning district for landscape business, and being that's what I do presently for my income, this property actually, this is the most intensively, I've got land movers to the south and behind me and all the rest, and I looked at changing it, and the planning consultant said you will have a hard time changing it because the general industrial will give you a fit. So, though it can be used for much more intensive uses, it's all conditional for what this gentleman does and what I do. There is no principal land use for it. So, this just worked out to where I said, okay, hopefully this will work. This is the most intensive land use, you know, for zoning, the most liberal, if you will, as far as use goes, and so hopefully this will work.
Did you want to see the aerial?
We're okay. So if we're out of questions, then somebody ought to be thinking of a motion.
Can I just ask you one more question?
Okay.
With the caretaker's residence, how far away is it from the business?
You know, the distance
Because if
wise,
it's to be close and to watch over the business, it just looks far away. How will you?
well, right now,
Watch over it.
where I'm at, he has put in no security measures in place, and I think with different security measures, it will help significantly. Even, you know, in the general industrial district, there's only 12 homes, and it's a huge space, and so if it's obvious that there's a presence around there, if it's being kept up much more readily, which fewer of them, you know, are things like that, they just look vacant in the evening, and they typically are. And so, in the evening, contrary to business activity, it just, you know, it'd be a residence coming and going. So, a passenger vehicle, and people would notice that, you know, the perpetrators or what have you, I would imagine. But that's the goal, is to have an accessory to the business to come after that being built, and having a dwelling place, as a lot of, even where I lease presently, they have the same thing on that same property. and have for years and years and years. So, maybe not situated a little bit differently, but
what I'm thinking here is that we ought to, try for a motion on the conditional use and also follow the planner's recommendation to postpone the preliminary site plan review if the conditional use passes until we see an updated preliminary site plan. Is that a reasonable thing to put on the table here?
Yes.
Okay, so is there a motion here?
If that isn't the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll second it.
Oh, well, what I was gonna, no, we have to make a motion on the conditional use, right?
Right.
I was checking for understanding. I'll make the conditional use motion, I can do that, all right? The planning, my motion is that the planning commission finds the land use and proposed use are in accordance with the ordinance provisions for a landscaping business and general industrial, and that the proposed access to Salem Road is acceptable per 4107.2, and that the conditional use be approved with the conditions that the business be established before the residence, the site plan is, and the notes here, I couldn't read my own note. Right? The site plan becomes reviewed per 64.0 successfully, and any expansion of the business beyond what's been presented is subject to further planning commission review. That's my motion.
No, Casey seconds it. He seconds
Casey
it.
seconded it. Are we okay? Did I miss anything?
No, okay, we covered it.
All right, does everyone understand the motion in front of us? Then I guess we're ready for a roll call vote.
Daniel, you seconded that?
No, Casey did.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
Pam Merlo, yes. TJ McLaughlin,
Yes.
Casey Kelly,
Yes.
Daniel Bergari,
Yes.
Darrell Lewandowski,
Yes.
Doug Shepherd.
Yes. Okay. And then we'll make a motion that we postpone the discussion of the preliminary site plan review to pending submission of an updated plan, meeting the planner's recommendations. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Daniel has that. We don't need a roll call vote for that one. It's just an agenda item. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Now I'd like to make a motion that we postpone the discussion of PSP zoning, given the lateness of the hour, to the next planning commission meeting. If that's acceptable, Mr. Nanny.
That is.
Okay. And there's a second for that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Item 9, reports of commissioners and committees. Do we have any?
No.
I'll ask, is there a report from the township board meeting, consideration of,
My understanding is that, the Show Shack project was postponed to an upcoming meeting.
it was, pardon?
It was postponed, they did not make a decision.
Postponed, not even discussed at the meeting?
Well, I think they made a discussion, but they did not,
They still have not reached a
they have
decision on
not
that.
still reached a
on
decision.
that
There are some issues that they're
rezoning.
working on.
Okay. Any other reports? Fine. We have draft minutes from the September 15th, 2014 meeting. Has everybody seen them? Would someone like to make a motion to approve them?
I make the motion to approve the draft minutes of September 15th, 2014 as submitted.
Second.
Second from Casey. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Motion passes. Item 11, public comment. How did I guess?
Yes. Well, the first thing I guess, I think most of us find it absurd here, that the planning commission would not look at the history with the applicant that we just reviewed, and also the enforcement by the township. Ms. Donna Crisp, who has held the job since the first complaint came in 2012, who also reported to the Board of Trustees her duties, and one of them being complaints, took no action. Supervisor Whitaker informed me, the resident, he could not enforce anything on landscaping companies because there were too many in our township. You want to comment on that? He said that he could not enforce when he was notified about the complaint at LRS. You have allowed LRS to build a barn to hide his activities of nonconformity, which will happen now that he has approval for a barn. You did not address the commercial driveway, which is a concern with a commercial business, and a Washtenaw County requirement, which was totally disregarded. The MIOSHA requirements for bathrooms are not being withheld. His mother is not, an older woman by herself is not allowing workers to come in at 2 in the morning to use her bathroom. So that's quite laughable. The operating days that he gave you were all over the place. They went from Monday to Friday to Saturday, well, maybe Sunday if we have to push it. So there was no consistency in what he told you about that. And there certainly is no follow-up. So when you say he is a neighbor and we should try to be neighborly, residents took the complaint to him first. We went to him, asked him what he was doing because he was rinsing chemicals on the site. We were concerned about the wells because there are shallow wells right across the street from him, 48 feet deep, which could get contaminated very easily. You know what he said? I can do anything I want on the property and don't make a complaint because I know Gary Whitaker. So, when you don't look at the history and you allow something to happen, you are essentially hurting not only the residents, but this entire community. So all of you, we hold all of you accountable, and you should know that. That's all I have to say.
Other public comment?
Yes. My name is Gary Whitaker, and I am the Salem Township Supervisor. Just like to make a comment. Number one, I made the comment about landscaping companies. If you go down every road in this township, you see trailers and trucks with lawnmowers. And all I said is that when it first was addressed to me, we approached it as a board. It was on the past board, it had brought to their attention, but they evidently had not addressed it. It laid there. We brought it to our board, or Melinda sent us a copy of it, and we addressed it. And I think the Planning Commission has done their job by the consultant that interprets the ordinances so that we understand it. But once again, we've never said that we can't stop any business that goes on in our township. But to accuse the board or accuse myself of intervening or doing something is just unfair. The other issue is Mr. Letterman. I have never met this man before until I received the letter from Melinda and also placed the phone call. And once again, once it was brought to our attention, we addressed it immediately. And we tried to first talk with both parties and to try to come to some agreement where we didn't have to go through all this like we're going through tonight. But again, I appreciate you doing all your jobs.
One last thing
Let's
then.
let someone else.
But
No,
no,
we're not
I'm
doing
gonna
it.
respond to that. He got to respond
Stop!
to me. No.
Yes,
Conditional
I'm in charge
app-
of this meeting, not you.
Conditional
application
We've been sitting
say,
here for hours,
cease
sir.
operation.
Listen to
Asking
your
you to come
crap.
to order.
Not cease.
Will you come to
Yes.
order, please?
Why? Because you
And
won't
sit
let
in your-
residents
no.
speak.
Would
You
you
will
come to
not let
order and sit in your
residents speak.
seat?
All of the residents are
You
not,
had
they
your-
don't get
you
to
had-
speak.
I'm losing my patience with you because
I'm
you're
not
not
too worried
listening
about
to
it.
me.
We've
Is
lost
this
ours
your
with
meeting?
you.
It's not your meeting.
We've lost ours with you.
Just
all
sit
of
down.
us.
When I recognize you, you can speak. I did not recognize you when you stood up there.
That's fine with me.
Good. Yes.
I give my time over to Melinda.
I didn't recognize you yet.
Oh, my goodness.
I need that lady's name.
Pardon?
I need the lady's name.
Sorry, D. Davy, 8849 Brookville Road.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment?
Raise your hand, Melinda.
Oh, yeah.
Meeting adjourned.
Oh, bull crap.
Wow.
Bull crap.
Melinda, don't forget your tab.